Welcome to the Board of Select meeting of February 10th here. It is 7 p.m. And keeping with the agenda, Mrs. Hine, do we have a warrant?
We do. Tonight's warrant is for $2,033,545.60, of which the school payroll is $1,396,294.16, and the town payroll is $165,251.96.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Public comment. Tim?
No, none, thank you.
John?
I don't want to steal Mr. Ritter's thunder, but there are a couple items on his list that I'm looking forward to hearing about, including an update on the borrowing, that we should expect some kind of an answer from the rating agency tomorrow morning, Mr. Ritter, and an update on the Woodland Street project we've been tracking. So we'll wait for Mr. Ritter to bring that in on his remarks.
Great. And I wanted to thank Mr. Ritter for inviting me to department heads meeting last Thursday morning. It was very informative, so it's always good to go to those department heads when we can, learn a lot. Anyone from the audience have any public comment? Mr. Ritter?
Nope, I have nothing.
Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the report of the town administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a very, I thought, very successful meeting last Wednesday morning with our town auditor and our treasurer collector and our accountant and myself. And we had a telephone conference call with our rating agency, Standard & Poor's. And we are currently rated as a AA+ community. We made the best pitch we could possibly make for going for a AAA rated community, and we should hear back on that at the latest on Wednesday morning of this week. I think that the team did a really outstanding job in conveying the strength of the community financially, and it's hard for me to believe that Standard & Poor's would not upgrade our rating, which means for those people who are watching at home that it costs less to borrow money. Basically, that's what it comes down to. So we'll be hearing about that very, very shortly. I wanted to draw your attention to a conflict of interest training, online training seminar that's now available for all employees and all volunteers. You should contact my office or the town clerk's office for additional information. I'm pleased to announce that we received last Friday a check from Mayflower Medicinals. Mayflower Medicinals is a grower of medical marijuana products, and we received a check of in the amount of $118,380. To date, Holliston has received $486,760. Which is a pretty impressive number, I have to say.
So that covers multiple fiscal years?
It covers 3 fiscal years. Yep.
To date, yep.
Yep, to date.
And how many companies do we have so
We have
far?
2 fully licensed and 2 in the works. The town was notified from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that we will receive a $100,000 grant to start implementing the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. And we have also started working on, and we have got a draft of a request for proposals to engage the services of a consultant. And the screening process will be beginning shortly. This is something that should be on the board's agenda or on the board's radar screen as to how you want to go about screening the responses to the request for proposals. So we haven't issued it yet, but we will be imminently. And when we get those responses in, we can either do it internally through staff, or we can give all the responses back to the board, and you can decide what to do with them.
Okay,
So that's probably about a month out,
all right.
I would guess.
Jeff, put you on the spot. Do you recall how much from that $100,000 would be set aside to fund the sustainability coordinator?
I don't believe there's anything there.
Is that your recollection?
No, so I haven't read the RFP. The RFP is for a consultant, so that
Mhm.
100,000 would cover particular tasks. So you're asking one question. I'm not sure the answer is quite as clear as what you're looking for, but it's broken down by tasks, and so it's who's going to perform the tasks. Consultant, of course, will perform some, and then it will be the sustainability coordinator after
Mhm.
July 1st who will perform the other. So I think we have to take a different look, a closer look at the grant award and our application, and I think that's some work probably for Karen and Chris.
Mhm.
I'm happy to help out where we kind
Thank
of
you.
map it out after July 1st.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we get that
Yeah,
right.
I think we need to put some focus on that too, and
Right.
assure that the coordinator that is on board now has a means to
Right.
continue forward.
I agree.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep. So that's a work in progress. Performance evaluations, I've sent out the self-evaluations to the first 5 department heads. They've all returned their evaluations to me. Now I'm in the process of setting up times for one-on-one reviews with each of them. I just take them sort of alphabetically, and that's the best way I can do it.
So the department heads that report to boards, though, would we be receiving feedback from the boards on their performance?
The way I do it normally is I provide them with feedback, and then the elected boards provide their own evaluations.
Will we see those evaluations?
They'll be in their files, yes.
Okay.
Yep. The next thing I have is that, just so the board knows and is publicly, the public is aware, is that I plan to retire in July of this year. I'll be submitting a letter of retirement shortly. So just want to let you know and give you as much notice as I possibly can, and get that process going. It's not going to be a short process. I think it's going to be a fairly lengthy process, but I think that the stars will align itself, so the board will be in a comfortable position to fill my position. So I met on Wednesday morning with our superintendent of schools. It's part of my monthly meeting with the superintendent of schools, and we had a really great conversation about what's going on with the school department and what we see coming forward. And finally, the Woodland Street cleanup. Our superintendent of public works has informed me that the structure is about to be removed imminently. You recall we had an appropriation at town meeting to do this, and that should be done hopefully by the end of this week.
Excellent.
That's what I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
No, thank you.
John?
No, I just, folks are watching that we didn't have a reaction to his announcement is because Mr. Ritter informed us of his intentions sometime last week, so we've been processing that, and we'll have some plans that we'll probably talk about down the road.
Right.
And thank you to Mr. Ritter for that gracious notice. We'll make use of that and hopefully not miss a beat. So
Yes.
more on that later.
July 12th.
I'm here to do whatever you want me to do, for as long as you want me to.
We appreciate the lengthy notice.
Yep.
Any questions from the audience on the town administrator's report? No? Okay. Next is the Board of the Library Trustees. If you'd like to come up, we would love to have you come up and and we're going to be discussing with the trustees the wish to purchase TD Bank and expand the library operations, specifically the children's programs. And so if you could each just introduce yourself and what your position is for the folks back home, please.
I'll go first. Christy Woods, our trustee.
Okay,
Nancy Barron, trustee.
Leslie McDonald, director.
thank you, Leslie.
Do
So is
do you
yours?
have this?
I do
just
not.
from the Realtor? I wouldn't say there's a ton of information on it, but it is there anyway.
Okay,
Do you have this?
The TD Bank building is up for sale, and the bank moved out the middle of November. We use their parking, So the parking that's right behind the library and anything that's behind the bank and around the bank, we have been using what's behind the library forever. I've been here almost 20 years and we were using it well before that. The bank's always been a really good neighbor to us.
Yeah.
So when people complain about the parking, it's not our parking. We have no parking whatsoever. Right now, they're plowing it, even though the building is empty and it's for sale. But that property around the bank, and behind the library goes with the building.
Wow,
that's
so even right behind the bank there where that new garden
Right.
belongs to the bank.
It does. It's always belonged to the bank, but we have used it.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because the parking that we're actually using and have been for decades actually belongs to them, and it goes with that building. I've been in there twice because we've been very interested because the location is obviously perfect. The property on the other side that's owned by Mr. Crowley is not for sale. And the first time I went through and looked at it, the second time I went with the town planner and the town building inspector. And I know Chris made a report to Jeff about what he saw. And we thought it had possibilities. The upstairs is in pretty good shape. The downstairs needs quite a bit of work, quite a lot of work actually. So we're very interested in it. I don't know, we haven't really sat down as a board and talked about, very specific things, but it coincidentally is happening at a time that we're doing a survey and we're working with a planner for the future, and then it pops up for sale, which we never expected in a million years. One idea, was to possibly, when you look at the survey, if someone has a beef, it's usually about the children's room because it's so small. It's really crowded, very tiny. In fact, we bought shelving for the downstairs foyer, so it's actually spilled out into the foyer. It's probably half the size it ought to be. It should be much bigger. So one idea would be to make that a children's branch and make this like sort of a campus. The town and building inspector, warned us that when if the town purchased it, hooking the two buildings together can sometimes not be a great idea. It can trigger codes in both buildings. And the other building is so old. So we're very interested in it. We've been through it twice. I guess what we are looking for is where do we go next? Is this something that the town would be interested in pursuing, and what do we do next?
Hey, Chris, can you come up too? We might have some questions for you. Could you tell us from your perspective what you saw and what you think the possibilities are?
Well, the possibilities are endless. Depends how much money you want to spend. No, there's a lot of potential with the building. It's in relatively good shape. It's, as Leslie said, essentially wide open. Design-wise, it's not something that you have to worry about sort of uncovering things. You can kind of see what you've got. It's one big room upstairs, and it's essentially one big room downstairs. Some of the systems have been updated, mechanical. Electrical's in okay shape. It has a fire alarm. It has some sort of basic features you'd be looking for. But there's certainly a number of hurdles we'd have to get over to bring it up to becoming a library, not the least of which is structurally, is it capable of holding books on the first floor level? But that's relatively easy to assess and potentially even mitigate if somebody wanted to, design us a floor system that could withstand the additional load of the books. Accessibility is always an issue. There's a few bathrooms that would have to be reworked to become handicap accessible. The entrances are acceptable as they are, but would probably need to be reworked, especially if you're thinking about the campus approach where the two buildings sort of work in concert with each other. You'd want to move the entrance over to the side that faces the library now, I would assume, so that you can have sort of one entrance in the center area between the two, like a courtyard that connects the two buildings. So you'd want to look at potentially doing some sort of an accessible entrance there, and potentially putting a lift or something that would get you access to the other levels.
Would the drive-through, the two, I think there's two drive-through
Mhm.
that's there now, would those be converted into parking, or is that gonna be part of the campus?
I mean, part of what we talked about, and it's obviously nothing is set in stone, but it's an opportunity with that space between the buildings to provide like a public space, a pocket park kind of a concept that connects the two buildings and gives the library a place to do outdoor services that they don't currently have a space to do, and sort of pretty up the entrance to both buildings. You could really address some of the issues that the existing library has by figuring out the grading and the plantings and everything else, and making that sort of look like it meant to go together. I mean, it's actually kind of a unique situation where it actually would benefit both buildings by having this sort of two buildings on one campus kind of concept. Potentially, you could take some of that drive-through lane and make it into parking, but not a lot. It seemed like.
The other thing people asked for was a drive-up book drop, especially if you are elderly or you have small children, or it can be hard to get out and dump the books and run.
So
So
you
we've
might
talked
keep
about
one of
that,
those
but
for a drop.
since we didn't own the drive-through, we certainly couldn't make it drive up to our building.
Right.
But if we owned it, that leaves you some possibilities there.
But yeah, the question of, do you continue having that be the drive-through to the back parking lot or not? Again, if it's going to be the entrance for both buildings, it would probably make sense to not have vehicle traffic go through there, just for safety's sake. Unless you want to build a bridge.
Right.
But
I know it's putting you on the spot, but do you have an idea of cost to refurbish this building, some sort of an idea? Because
no.
obviously
I don't either.
there's quite a cost
No idea.
to buy it, and then, it obviously has to be fitted for the needs.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's something we could certainly put out some requests to try to get some kind of a number on it without having a real plan and scope. It's going to be somewhat of a shot in the dark, although I can certainly help put together a scope for it.
Yeah.
But
It's hard to make decisions without numbers, and
I guess I don't know how to get the numbers. What the next step is. I wasn't
Right.
sure where to go with it. Yeah, I don't have a clue what it would cost.
yeah.
I mean, I would say a lot of it was cosmetic, wouldn't you?
yeah.
But then again, if it involves, like Chris says, the weight of the books, then maybe a lot more than that. I just
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah,
I mean, the price is, when you consider
I
the
sort of
size of the
reasonable.
building, it's a
Yeah.
pretty reasonable price,
Yeah.
but sometimes outfitting the building is more expensive than the price of the building.
So
Questions?
I have a couple, yeah. So the building itself is 4,900 square feet.
mhm.
The current library is 9,200
Right.
square
Mhm.
feet, so it's more than 50% of the size of the
Right.
current building.
Right.
So that's a huge growth in the size
It
of the
is.
library. Have you given any thought to the possibility of having more space than you actually need to expand services
I
and
don't think so,
programming?
because we have so little storage in 1904/85. I mean, almost nothing. Just the thought of having a little bit of storage over there would be fabulous. The other thing is, if you look at the surveys, people want a play area that's not the size of half this table.
Yeah.
People wanted some outdoor space, a patio. They wanted a place where they could eat their lunch or drink a cup of coffee. They wanted a story time room, a craft room for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, those things take up quite a bit of space. There are things we
Probably more
can't.
hookup space for computers.
Yeah, we can't even come close to in the children's room because it's so cramped.
So it's conceivable that out of the services and space and programming that you're hearing back from in the survey,
You
that
could
that
easily-
space is.
Yeah, you could easily, and provide a little bit of storage. I mean, this is really a child parent oriented town. So it isn't, I guess it's no surprise that they would want a pretty good sized children's room. And there's just so many things. They had a reference table before where kids could do their homework. That's gone because we couldn't put the books back on the shelves, so we gave that up. So it's not. We're so inadequate now. I don't think that building would be overkill.
Okay.
The other thing is, it would be great to have some storage. I mean, right now we gave up our staff room like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's no place for us to eat for the staff. You've got to do it in the meeting room or at your desk, because we gave it up for storage. So, yeah.
Okay.
The other thing
Also,
is,
the downstairs workroom was given over to provide
we turned
an
that into
additional
a
meeting room
meeting
because
room.
there's such a demand.
Right.
And it's full all the time.
Yeah.
You also could take the young adult section off the mezzanine, which
Yeah.
is just a strip, as you've seen it. Put that strip down in the old children's room. They would have their own room. They wouldn't be annoying people on the computers anymore. And they could actually do things in their own room.
Okay.
So it solves a bunch of problems
Okay.
that came up on the survey.
Have you given any thoughts about revenue generation for the town out of the space? So, you know, the building, I think if I've got it correct, I didn't confirm with the assessors, but it looks like it pulls in about $12,000 a year for property
In
tax.
Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I wondered about the possibility of revenue generation in that spot. If, I'm kind of going off the thought that maybe there's excessive space, that you wouldn't need all of it, would you consider letting some of it be for some sort of
Office.
private-public partnership that might have some revenue generation?
Did you have something specific in mind?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think honestly, I think there are all manner of ideas out there. I was not able to find anywhere other than one community in the Midwest that had apartments attached to their library. But the idea of like you mentioned, a coffee shop, even a post office,
Right.
having a branch in downtown Holliston. I didn't know if the consultant had explored any of that with you.
No, I've never, the one thing I've seen is where private caterer will run like a cafe out of a library where they get some space, but those are big libraries, not Holliston size, because they want to make money, so they want a lot of people. I've even seen libraries our size who get a vending machine. They don't make enough money, and the vending company takes it back. I don't think that could even really work. Yeah.
Then the two other questions, and they're both quick. So you mentioned last week for the finance committee that you pull in about 7,000. You have about 7,000 patrons
We
a
do.
year. Do you see more patronage through this expansion that would be
Well,
possible with
one of the
new
things that we
space?
heard over and over again, this survey was a little different than the one we did 4 years ago, because we heard from 600 people who were pretty much regular users. And what we heard this time, because we put it in with the census, was a large number of non-users.
Okay.
And it's their town too, and they vote. And what we found that we didn't get as much of last time was people who had stopped using Holliston and were using larger libraries. And one of the things we heard was, I like the Holliston library, but I want some place that has X, Y, and Z, that's bigger, newer, not run down. And that's what we heard. And it was a little bit of an eye-opener, because when you hear from the non-user who's left you, so to speak, for greener pastures, you start realizing, well, maybe they would come back if the things that they're getting at, Wellesley or Natick, or where Millis, which has a new library in Hopkinton, does, maybe if they had those things, they would come back and use the library in their town. But they're telling us it's too small, it's crowded, you can't, there's so many things you can't do, type of thing.
Because I think what's compelling to me is the idea that you're bringing back people into the downtown who then go on to frequent the businesses that are in the downtown as well. So that's a compelling thought for
And when
me.
we asked about the building, the first thing was, please stay downtown, and the second thing was, please buy the TD Bank. Those were the two top ones. And we asked 7 questions, all different incarnations, build somewhere else, acquire other property, things like that.
Okay. Last question real quick. Have you explored state grant programs for
Well,
library development and expansion?
There is a state construction grant program. The thing about it is there won't be any money for it for the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
And in about 2 years, we could apply for a planning grant. And it does all kinds of things. It can build an addition, it can renovate, it can build a whole new building somewhere, it can put you in a building like Parks and Rec went into the Veristat building and made it a Parks and Rec building. But, it's competitive, and it's about an 8 to 10 year timeline. And when you get close to it, they want you to have, a purchase and sale for the property you're acquiring.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now it's available. Yeah. So the timing is all goofy. Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
John.
But there is more,
questions.
yeah.
I do have a few questions, yes. Leslie, or trustees, should the current library be blown up?
Not according to our patrons.
No? Okay, that's all.
Not according to our
Um,
patrons.
Chris, is the current library a money pit?
No. It's a older building that will require maintenance.
And I think you did a review of that for us
Mhm.
some time ago. Do you remember what that told us?
There's a lot of the systems have been worked on, but will require some updating along the way over the next few years. But none of it's deal breaker material. Structurally speaking, it's in good shape, and it has a brand new roof. It has brand new truss ceiling. It's going to need the usual cash infusions every few years to keep everything running properly.
You folks hired a consultant through a grant, correct?
Yep.
Do you have a timeline on the consultant's report and when we can
She should
see it and
have
read
it in the beginning of April. So the survey is done, the public forums are done, and we start meeting tomorrow night to write the 5-year plan, and then she will write a report. So she's been doing her measurements from the plans and physically and using the formulas. So what she's doing is she's taking what's in the survey that people wanted and saying, okay, this is what they want. Can it be done in this building? I suspect not. So we should have that report in the beginning of April.
In the event that the building is not forthcoming, it's not supported, will there be an alternative plan from the consultant to live within the library confines that you have now?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we talked about was a lot of things are in flux with ebooks. The thing about ebooks is they're radically different than a print book because you don't have to put them on a shelf. You know, they're kind of in the ether. What that goes up every year, the usage of it, and because our circulation is stable, obviously our print is edging down as they become more popular. That will probably slowly over time, and I can't tell you quite how fast, give you some room. The other thing is, if you go into the library, that 3rd floor is open. It's a mezzanine. It could be closed up, and it would give you more floor space. That's another possibility that we thought about.
So will
might
the
be
consultant
possible.
give you those kind of
Yes,
alternative
she will give you
plans?
some other ideas, of things that she has seen, that may be a possibility. And we talked, that we had some ideas. And
You
talked
mentioned,
about-
Ms. Hine, that the number of visitors that are currently coming to the library, about 7,000 per year.
Well, we have 7,000 card holders, and that's been really consistent for many, many, many years.
So I would like if somebody could send it to me, the last 10 years, the number of visitors. And I mean, people
sure.
walking in, not electronic
Oh,
access
okay,
users, okay?
okay.
So break that out if you
Yep.
could.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you loud and clear about the need for children's space, and in a community like ours, we love when the families use the libraries and so forth. Would the consultant be evaluating the possibility of flipping the operations of the library such that the main floor, which is where you walk in, and that's where the adult use is, could go downstairs, or portion of it to make use of the children's area on the main level, if that's where you see
I mean, that was
the
something
customers moving?
we talked about as well,
Okay.
that we talked about.
Okay.
Because our main space issues are downstairs.
Mhm.
When you come upstairs, you think, oh, it lets up,
Mhm.
And we heard from a lot of seniors who never go into the children's room who said, it's fine the way it is, what's the problem? But
Right.
they're not using children's. So the real problem is children's, yeah. YA isn't great either, young adults, not the teenagers, isn't
Mhm.
good either. But that's the main problem, so that's another possibility.
I was hoping to see Mr. Malone here tonight. I
He's
reached out
away.
to him. Yeah, I
Yeah,
spoke
he's
to him
away.
briefly today.
Mhm.
He's in a better place, as they would say.
Yes.
A warmer place. He said it was 80
In a
degrees. He
warmer
was
place.
looking at the cruise ships.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
warmer place.
But I asked him his opinion. I would ask the trustees theirs as well. Green Street, right around the corner, as you probably know, is a project that we're working on that will hopefully and likely lead to the raising of the building and expansion of municipal parking. Does that parking availability help the library in its course for finding alternative spaces for your patrons?
I don't
I
know.
will tell you, Mr. Malone said straight up, absolutely, but that was his opinion. I just want to get yours as well.
Maybe, it's a distance away. There's also the municipal lot, and that's further yet. I mean,
Yeah, that's a little further around. That's down near the fire station.
Yeah.
That one
yeah.
you're talking
I
about.
mean, personally, I walk there, but there are a lot of people like the elderly or people with strollers and multiple small
Mhm.
children
Mhm.
who I don't think would be enticed to visit the library more often if they could park over on Green Street.
Okay. So if somebody could give me the visitor information, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
I talked with Vin from the Finance Committee on Saturday, and one of the things he mentioned was, vision of the town, and when we buy a new building, and kind of alludes to Mrs. Hines' point, is that, if we can utilize a building better, combining it with other things, so that it's a little more cost-effective for our town. Rather than having all these buildings all over the place with just one department in them. And they typically also use up a lot of outside area too. So that's why I was interested in hearing if you thought maybe part of the building could be used for something else. But I get what you're saying. You've got a lot of storage at 1750 Washington Street.
I mean, I have so little storage at 752.
Yeah.
I mean, we've just lived with it.
Right.
The ability to have a little storage over there would be really, really
We
nice.
also saw a great number of surveys that were indicating a high demand for additional meeting space.
Yeah.
I guess
Makes sense.
I guess if we had extra room, I'd like to make a meeting room in there too.
Right,
A
right,
small
yeah.
meeting room.
When you
Yeah.
talk about storage, are you talking about dry storage or temperature-controlled storage?
No, just storage where you could store books for the book sale or craft materials or.
It's been a while since I looked at the garage up there. I don't think it's...
Really?
I don't think-
Yeah.
That's not heated, is it, Bob, the garage? No.
So no, it wouldn't. I mean, some of it wouldn't even have to be heated. It's just, a lot of the lower floor is taken up with the air handling unit, the boiler, it's the elevator room. I mean, there's very little storage built in.
Just one last question, Mark.
Go right ahead.
What was the movie you were playing today?
Oh, Harriet.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's a packed room there.
Yeah, yeah. They're a really nice group of people. Yeah,
That was the afternoon movie that you were showing.
yeah. They're a really
Harriet.
nice group of people.
Can I ask a question too?
Absolutely.
Does the town have any appetite to play landlord? I mean, if the town purchases the building and says, for 5 years, we're not going to occupy the space, we're going to lease it, but at least now we own the parking and we own the potential future development of that site, we can sock away money in the capital fund, do something with it. We could even incorporate a portion of the building as storage for a temporary measure. I mean, you could see some benefits pretty quickly and probably recoup a large portion of the cost of the purchase
Right.
just by keeping it a commercial building downtown. It just happens to be one that the town owns and operates. But throwing it out there.
I suppose that's an option. The other option is you just leave it on the commercial rolls and let the property sell and keep it on the commercial. Because
Right,
if
right.
it does come our way, we
parking
lose that
disappears.
income.
Yeah, the parking goes away, potentially, and that's the issue I think that we should be a little cautious about, because that, again, if a new tenant comes in and says, we want all of our parking, and,
Yeah. They're entitled to it.
They wouldn't be completely crazy.
Yeah.
There is one other part to the conversation that I would be curious to know about, and that's other empty space in the downtown area that's not being leased or rented or occupied right now. So, to your point, is that even a viable option to have a business come in? I mean, who knows what the future would bring in terms of potential buyers for that property, but I'd be curious to know how many other retail spaces or building spaces are open in the vicinity of
Didn't you
the
tell me
library.
there was quite a bit of commercial property?
there's a number of properties that are either for lease or for sale right downtown right now, yeah. Which doesn't mean they're all empty, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
it looks like there's some
What the
transactions
market's
available.
like, yeah. Okay.
When you met with the finance committee, did they have thoughts and ideas?
We really didn't get into it all that much specifically.
Okay.
We went through our budget. There wasn't really any.
Not really, they
Mhm.
mostly deferred to you.
Okay.
They wanted to know your
There wasn't
opinion
really
before
too
they
mu-
expressed their views on it.
Too much of a
Right.
long conversation about it, yeah.
Right.
I mean, they know it's for sale, obviously.
Right. Does TD Bank, they obviously know that you were interested. Are they willing to hold off on the sale, or? I
You
mean,
know-
obviously, nothing can happen till town meeting.
We originally asked them if they would donate it,
Yeah.
and that went nowhere, but we tried. And I asked him, have you had a lot of interest? He said, I have shown it, but I didn't get the impression there were people dying to buy it.
Yeah.
And he said, it may sit for a while. And what he asked me was, what is the process for this? And I said, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
So one thing I said to him is, we're going before the selectmen. I guess I'll find out what the next step is, if there is a next step.
Right.
So I'm not getting the feeling that there's a ton of interest in it. I mean, Jeff had asked, would they
I saw it.
have any flexibility on the price, and he seemed sort of positive about that. He said, especially if it sits.
Yeah.
Who would represent Holliston as a real estate agent in any transaction like this TD Bank or another
No
one?
idea.
So I think that's an important piece to figure out is, if there were to be a negotiation on any property.
I have no
who was
idea
gonna-
how that works.
And we really need some idea of cost to retrofit this too,
Right,
because,
right.
we don't wanna go to certainly, if it worked out, you don't wanna be going to town meeting and not knowing the cost of it.
Exactly.
So either way, I think,
And I know
People
Parks
who
and
do
Rec had that, when they went to town meeting, they had the cost of the Veristat building and what it would cost to bring it up to,
Right.
usefulness for them.
Right.
But I have no idea what it would be.
yeah, so I think, we need to have, somebody look into the costs. I don't know if Chris can help with that, but it's hard for anybody to make a decision without more information.
Well, our consultant's report should at least give us some concrete ideas.
Yeah.
That could be a jumping off point for, okay, let's price out
Yeah, and
how
that's
much it's gonna
the
cost to
beginning of
reinforce the floors.
Right. I mean, what she's
Early
mostly
April.
going to tell you is, can you do what you want to do in 752? And the
Yeah.
answer, I suspect, will be no. And that's what she pretty much does. She said, as far as like, can you do something with the building you have to make it work? That's really an architect. Yeah.
Right.
So she's not an architect. She's looking at it from a programming standpoint.
Yeah.
This is what your patrons told us they want. You can't do it in this building, or you can. Sometimes.
And it seems to me we're gonna spend some money at some point to either work on the old one to make it a little bit more user-friendly, or if we're buying this building and retrofitting it. So I think really it's best that we wait for that report in early April. And in the interim, if you could, they don't mind you going in the building and getting some costs on some sort of.
I mean, where do I get them from, I guess is my question, without hiring somebody? I mean,
Yeah.
who would give it to us for free?
Is it, because these things can be open-ended, is it $500,000, is it?
I don't know. I have no
$250,000? What is it,
idea. I
you
have no idea.
I would just caution the board that, you're gonna get a report in April, the first part of April. The warrant has to be published by mid-April.
Right,
The window is closing extremely quickly on this.
right.
And she, again, she's not in construction. She's not, all she can really tell you is the programming needs.
Right.
She's not gonna be able to say, oh, if you put $200,000 into the TD Bank building, it'll be nice and you can use it for children's.
Yeah.
She can't do that. That's not her.
So
Yeah.
we understand the cost of the building is $650,000 is the
Right.
current asking price.
Right,
I can just throw out a number of $500,000 to do renovations.
right.
But I'm not a contractor, and I have no idea. But we could get a contractor in there, I think, pretty quickly to get an idea as to how to, gut the building and how to try to bring it up to speed.
Right.
Pretty quickly, I think.
Well, the thing of it is as you mentioned, not only is town meeting coming, but the prospect of this opportunity is gonna go away too,
It will.
if the town doesn't actively decide they want it. So if you can get some pricing on what it would cost to disassemble what's in there and put something reasonable. And if somebody can negotiate the price to get it down a little bit too. I mean, that's the asking price. That would be helpful.
Does your board have the ability to form a working group? Would you be able to go about that process of forming a working group that could explore some of this with a real estate agent, a developer, architect, perhaps pull in somebody from the finance committee, perhaps pull in the building inspector?
I mean, I think we could. I guess the question is, you know, who would pay the construction person? Who would pay the architect?
Right.
I mean, I have a few thousand that'll be left over from the planning grant, but that's not very much money.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm guessing.
I'm not sure I'm meaning like an architect to draw up plans.
Right, but
as
I
much
mean,
as
to
someone
take a look at the building.
I mean, we've done this before, if I'm correct, at the clubhouse up at the golf course.
Yeah, yeah.
We've done this in other
And
ways.
did we rely on a local construction person?
And we've done it for the senior center as well, and I believe, yes, we have.
And we were able to get free estimates.
Okay, all right.
So I'm wondering if that's something your board could consider
Right,
doing
okay.
to kind of move along the idea.
Okay.
And basically, you know, what it's really all about is getting something together that's reasonable and let the voters decide.
Mhm.
You know, because it is their town. And that's why we have 2 town meetings.
Right.
So that, you know, our job is to make things as transparent as possible.
Mhm.
So getting some pricing from construction folks,
Okay.
estimates,
All right,
anything you can do to get costs,
okay,
you know, estimates.
okay.
And if you know, if you don't feel comfortable talking to TD Bank and asking, you know, to, if we could be available for 500,000, you know, I mean, that's the asking price. So
Right,
you know, we
right.
can do better than that.
I think he's curious about whether the town really wants to buy it at all. You know, because he said, we're really out of that. And I said, I don't really know.
Yeah.
You know, but it sounds like you're at least interested. You just want to know what the price tag is.
Well, it sounds like it would solve some of the problems that you
Mhm.
have.
It would solve a
But we
bunch
really need
of
to see that
problems.
report in April.
Right.
Because they may have some ideas
Sure.
that we don't need to buy a new building.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, it would be nice to know some of the costs
Right,
if we
okay.
wanted to buy
So
it.
we could try to find a construction person that could give us sort of a ballpark on
Yeah,
what it would, you know, cost to renovate it. It's mostly the downstairs, but there is some up as well.
right.
And like Chris said, you've got the problem of stuff that's a lot heavier than what a bank would put over there.
Right.
So that's a
I'm
whole
thinking
nother
how much
issue.
money weighs and how much they
Well,
have
it
there,
used to
but
be a
that
church
adds
at
things,
one
but-
point too, so this floor system is at least designed for 300-ish people,
Right.
which is better than a lot of buildings
Yeah.
are starting out at.
Right.
So,
But we talked about the septic tank, things like that.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right.
When would you need to have a number by?
Well, whatever's reasonable, you know, without rushing too much, but we do have to wait for that report in April. We could put a placeholder on the warrant in case the board decides to move
It's already on
forward.
there.
Hmm?
It's already
It's
on
on there?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you have a placeholder on the warrant.
Okay.
I think you put it on last week, put it?
Yeah, it's on there.
So,
Okay. All right.
if we can get this other information, because,
Okay.
you know, we can't go to town meeting without knowing,
Okay.
all this information, so,
Okay. All right.
you know, some ideas of,
Mhm.
what would it take to petition off and make some of those meeting rooms we were
Right,
talking
right.
about,
Yeah.
things like that, that would
Okay.
be helpful.
Mhm. All right.
And of course, not everything has to be done in 1 year. You could, you
Sure.
know,
Mhm.
you could do part of the building and we could pick away at it
Mhm.
over several years too,
Okay.
so.
Mhm. All right.
But any information you could get would be helpful.
Okay, sure,
All
that
right.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
thank you. It's bedtime.
Okay, next is the facilities manager position. And I'm not sure, Mr. Keith is outside. But basically, just to bring the public up to speed with what's been going on is we had chosen a facilities manager, and that didn't work out. Come on up, Mr. Keast. And so he backed out, and we've already had a second interview with Mr. Lefter, but we did not have a second interview with Mr. Keast. So we would like to do that tonight. So I will have you, if you would introduce yourself, and also,
I'm going to have to recuse,
right.
if you don't mind. I'll
John's
bow out at
gonna-
this
And
point.
would you be more comfortable facing this way so you're not quite with the audience?
No, doesn't matter to me.
You're
I
most
can-
comfortable, you can certainly sit in front
Okay.
if you'd
No,
like.
this is fine. This
Okay.
is
So if
fine.
you kind of want to go through, like the first time you did, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your resident here and some of your background and responsibilities and other jobs, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay, great, thank you. My name is James Keast. I've been a Holliston resident for 15 years. For 30 years, I've been in the global corporate world, where I had direct oversight for various facilities, staff, customers, and financial matters. I had a varied career. Initially started out in litigation consulting, providing expert witness testimony for accidents and injuries with consumer products, and automobiles was a big part of that. From there, I joined with a consumer products testing lab, and that's really where I gained a lot of my facilities experiences in the lab. A lot of design for the labs, as well as employee and office spaces within those facilities. In 2016, I decided to leave the corporate world and consult for a while. After that, I joined with a company called Mr. Handyman, and I'm still there. And there, I provide a number of, conduct a number of activities, and most recently, as it relates to facility management, conducted a complete facilities review for a campus of an organization that's in Hopkinton. I have five structures there that did a complete assessment on, and then developed plans based off of that assessment in terms of things that needed immediate attention versus things that could fall into a regular maintenance schedule. Personally, I've always been very hands-on. I've always had a keen eye for issues and problems with mechanical things. I've rebuilt several automobiles, and most recently have built a car completely from scratch. I also have invented some things. I have a couple patents on things that go on the bottoms of chairs, floor protectors, and was in fact on QVC selling those things many years ago, but have done that as well. So that's basically my background in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about your education
Sure.
for the folks?
Sure. I went to Clarkson University. At the time, it was Clarkson College of Technology, where I earned a degree in civil and environmental engineering. I also minored in traffic studies there, and that was back in the 80s.
Excellent. Now, one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize with this position was that it's an executive position that would be gathering data about all of our assets in town. So it's important to us that you have that education that you mentioned of having an engineer's education, because you need to know a little about a lot for this
Yes.
position. So
Absolutely.
that's why it's kind of difficult to fill. And we've talked to a lot of people, but we're not looking for somebody that is going to be hands-on as much as we are someone that's going to run this new department and probably eventually have a couple of employees, is what we've projected anyway, which may be more hands-on. to take care of some of the lighter duty things, to take care of our assets,
Absolutely.
our buildings. So the facilities manager position would be working with other department heads, getting to know their buildings and creating lists, Excel spreadsheets on everything from the roof to the floor, and creating some sort of a capital plan that you would work with the finance committee
Absolutely.
to try to figure out a priorities list of how things should be attacked. We've had a number of situations that horrified us in the way that things were repaired over the last few years, and we realized that we had to spend money twice in some cases, and it really started to concern us that our buildings weren't being taken care of properly. They weren't on a schedule. There wasn't anybody really in charge of them. And our poor town administrator was running all over town, disrupting his day. He's trying to concentrate on his computer, and he has to leave and go to the Pinecrest Golf Course or over at the Flag Field because things weren't being done properly. And he doesn't have those kind of talents, and nor should he have them, and he shouldn't be doing that kind of work. He's our most expensive, person in the town hall, and we've got him running around doing things like that. So this position is very important to our town.
No, absolutely. And to answer some of the questions you had, and the last time I was here, I presented you with a really sort of a high-level outline of what I would do if selected for this role. And it does involve a complete assessment from roof to basement of all of the structures, all the structures in town, developing up basically a condition assessment, a facility condition assessment form, and then with that, prioritizing what are the emergency things, if anything, that needs to be taken care of, as well as what should fall under regular maintenance and what can be deferred, and a big part of this plan is communicating with the stakeholders of the various facilities and understanding their needs. What are the future needs? What are their desires? What do they expect to get out of that particular facility? And then gleaning that information, and then, if necessary, putting that into a capital plan or into the capital improvement plan.
Right. That sounds like a good approach. Do you have some questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple. So a professional career in the trades is an asset for this position. What professional experiences do you identify as a strength or an asset for this position?
I would say the most critical trait is communication, really. It's to be decisive, strong analytical skills, tech savvy. One of the things that I also outlined in that document was that we should get away. I know you mentioned Excel spreadsheets and things, but we should get away from that stuff. We really should utilize some software system that's out there, a number of them that exist. School Dude's an example. Framingham uses this Find It, Fix It, software. But software that allows anyone to put in particular work orders. It tracks them. It also works as a tool in terms of calendarizing the maintenance, and it also outlines activities that may need to occur from an inspection standpoint.
What experience do you have working with or in the trades prior to 2016?
Experience has all been very personal experience. I have completely redone homes, stripped them completely to the studs, done all the electrical, have done all the plumbing, have done all the HVAC. So my experience when I lived in Illinois, I actually was a home inspector in Illinois as well. And so I actually established a relationship with a real estate agent, and that's how I did that.
Okay. You described experience during your first interview with a corporate capital improvement plan.
Mhm.
What differences do you expect to find with the municipal capital improvement plan?
I think some of the biggest differences, sort of from the private sector in terms of coming to the public sector, is the whole bidding process. And I am familiar with the whole 30B bidding process in terms of needing quotes, 3 quotes for. I mean, some of this happens within the corporate world as well. Anything over 50,000 needs to have the sealed bids and whatnot. There's a very defined process in terms of selecting a potential candidate to do the work.
You'll work alongside several established departments in town, competing for limited resources. How do you influence from the side to advance your priorities?
What I would do is I really would be safety is paramount. So as I'm working with the various stakeholders of the various facilities, would be identify anything that's critical or safety issue or something that could be quite inexpensive to address now that if not could lead to very expensive repairs in the future. And it really would be a prioritization of those particular tasks.
Okay. How do you address an underperforming employee? What strategies do you use to improve performance?
It all comes down to communication. I've had a number of opportunity to manage various groups. I've managed small teams. I've managed a group of up to 75 people. And those folks were international. A number of those folks were overseas. Really it starts with a detailed outline of their responsibilities, basically their job description, and holding them accountable to that. You can hold someone accountable and talk to them in a positive, constructive way, as opposed to say, hey, you're not doing your job. So that's my approach to working with folks that may need improvement and whatnot.
Okay. This position has a 3-year work plan.
Mm-hmm.
Your resume shows a history of 3 years or less of employment at 6 of the 10 listed positions on the resume. Can you explain is there anything you'd like to explain?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So if I go through your resume,
Uh-huh.
there are 10 positions that are listed?
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay. And it looks like, if I've got my math right, and I
Mhm.
might not,
Mhm.
it looks like about 6 of those 10 positions were for less than a 3-year time period. I just wanted to
Okay,
give you the
okay.
chance to
Yes.
explain that.
There was, I believe, one of the organizations they actually went bankrupt,
Okay.
so that was a change. The other was a company, I believe it was Aspen Marketing. It was actually SDI Promotion, was purchased by Aspen Marketing, then was purchased by Equity Marketing Associates. So they're all sort of the same company,
Okay.
but were acquired by one another
Okay.
over that time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and then my last question would be, which park or open space in Holliston is your favorite and why?
I would say Stoddard Park is my favorite. I was, prior to joining the Parks and Recreation Commission, I've always thought that park was sort of the jewel of the town. It's a beautiful beach, a wonderful lake, it just needs attention. There are a number of things that could be done there from a physical improvement that would really take that park over the top. But I would say the Stoddard Park, in terms of the playing fields, the play structures, the gazebo, the beach, the waterfront, the ability to rent a canoe or a kayak,
Yeah,
is a wonderful asset to the town.
it's got a lot going for
It
it.
absolutely does.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all you have? Mrs. Hyde?
Yes.
How would you describe your management style? Do you delegate or are you hands-on?
I would say I'm definitely hands-on. I'm a team player. I truly believe in a collaborative approach with a team. I don't profess to know everything, but I can build a team that does, so that we can all reach a common goal. I feel everyone's voice needs to be heard. But as you know, when you get all the voices, you got to sort of corral them. It's like herding cats, and you got to corral those voices into one common goal,
Yes, you do.
which I can do quite effectively.
Great. The first interview we had, I had asked you what would be your top asset that you would bring to the town, and it seems to me you already answered that tonight. And I noted with that interview that you had very strong communication skills, and you answered that question again with not only communication but technology, and then disseminating the information to others, and so that's a real plus for this position. As you may know, our previous choice for this position was withdrawn from consideration. Knowing this, how would you achieve the confidence of town stakeholders to do this job?
Well, basically, performing the job and exceeding the expectations of the job. I'm a degreed civil engineer, been for 30 years, been in the executive setting, managing process, workflow, budgeting, and finance for a number of facilities. Again, I'm an excellent communicator, collaborator, a team player. I have I would say significant experience in facility assessments from my home inspection days as well as currently with my role within Mr. Handyman. Also, being a resident of the town, I feel is quite positive because I have an inherent investment, if you will, to protect the assets in town. You know, they belong to all the taxpayers. And so, you know, why not optimize them? And I've seen a number of the facilities, and I did a review, and you can see from my memo from before, that need attention. And it's simple. They're simple things that can be done to really prevent significant issues in the past. And that's important to me because when it comes time to vote at town meeting, and we need $500,000 for some particular structure or facility that could have been prevented, you know, a couple years prior with some adequate maintenance, that impacts me.
It really does, yeah. If you were to get the position, how can we judge a year from now if we hired that you were the right person?
That's a good question, because that's the same question I have for you. But I would say it would start with feedback that you're getting from the various stakeholders in town.
Yeah.
You know, James is knowledgeable, he's, you know, conscientious, he's efficient, a good communicator. One of the things that's critical, and it's outlined in the employment plan, is some online work order facilities tracking tool. That's critical.
Yes.
So that needs to be up and running, fully functional.
Connect all the dots.
Connect all the dots. I mean, there's such opportunity to leverage the work that may be going on one particular facility that could then be carried over into another. From a maintenance standpoint, right now everything's working in silos.
Right.
This brings everything together, and you know, can maximize, you know, money spent.
I'm going to share with you a story, just so that you know just how bad things are. One day
Remember, I'm a taxpayer.
I went to 1750 Washington Street, the new building that we bought a few years ago, and we had hired an architect and a construction company to do some work. And when I arrived, they were putting a new ceiling over a fluorescent light that was still working. And they were going to close it up and leave it like that. It was just amazing to me that type of thing was going on in our town. And part of your job would be to check on projects that are being worked on for us, and therefore freeing up our town administrator so he can do what he was hired to do. And so this may be very busy at times. In fact, there were a few times, not more than a year ago, there were 5 different projects going on simultaneously, as well as all the assessment work and stuff that would need to be done. So
Multitasking is king.
yeah, I
absolutely.
think that
Yeah, you know, and to that point about the light, unfortunately, it does happen. And again, you know, my view would be, it's like, you know, that's my money that's being spent, burning that light that no one sees.
Yeah.
So.
Not to mention it's a fire hazard.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
he's over there, I'm sure he doesn't like to hear this. But it's true. That's
Yeah.
what I discovered. Pretty bad.
Yes.
So, well, that's good to hear that, you know, I think communication is so important for this position because you need to be able to handle several things going on all at once and get the right information to the right people.
Absolutely.
And get estimates and, would you be able to do procurement and that sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do that, you know, now within Mr. Handyman. I did it all through my times in the facilities I managed in the consumer lab testing space as well.
Okay, any other questions?
Can I ask one last question?
Absolutely.
What licenses and certifications do you currently hold
In terms of
as
building licensing.
related to this
Yeah,
position?
none.
Okay,
Yeah, this position doesn't require any,
Mhm.
right.
actually. But if you feel there's a need, if the facilities coordinator felt they needed a license, they could always go get it,
Yeah.
but it's not in the job description
Mhm.
to give any licensures. We were more interested in education
Mhm.
of being an engineer was one of our top things that we were looking for, and I found out that some of the search committee was not aware of that, which was too bad, because as I say, we were looking at this as an executive position.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I think my question's just in regards to year 3, so plenty of time,
year 3, yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Well,
obtaining a certified public
yeah.
purchasing official certification, so that's
Yeah.
why I brought up.
Yeah, no,
But I'm all set.
absolutely, and there are a number of facility management organizations out there. In fact, I have information here. There's a big conference going on in September. There's a subchapter meeting in March in Boston, and it's organizations called IFMA, International Facility Management Association. Would absolutely join that. They also have certification programs available as well. Again, I'm quite knowledgeable in this area, but in terms of getting the piece of paper to match, it's would definitely be on my list to do.
Okay, very good.
All set.
All set? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see you
Jen.
again.
And I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming again.
Thank you very
and
much.
Jeff will be in touch with you.
Okay.
Should we grab Mr. Cronin back? We can move on.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Yep.
And so the choices are either Mr. Lefter or Mr. Keast. We had interviewed Mr. Lefter twice. Can you give me your thoughts on Mr. Lefter?
Well, I would ask for a little more time. It's been 2 weeks since we interviewed Mr. Lefter. There are some notes that I would go back and review, make some comparisons, and if it's okay, I'd like to wait till
Oh, absolutely.
next week.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And we can put that on the agenda, Jeff,
Yep.
for
Next week?
a week or two.
Great,
to
thank you.
kind of
Next week is okay?
Yeah, I just want to have a chance to
Yeah.
review
Okay.
some notes. Yep.
Real quick side note for next week, it's next Tuesday, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
All right.
great.
So, moving on, I understand the town clerk is not here, so we're gonna skip.
That's correct.
We're gonna skip that. Youth and Family Services budget.
Oh, you want to skip the town clerk? You don't want to have a discussion about her letter today?
Is it-
I thought it was more informational, and that we would wait for her, talk about her.
Did she ask to attend, or was it informational for us to consider as part of our budget building exercise?
My honest response is I have not read her correspondence.
Okay,
I
I
saw
did,
that.
actually. I read it today, so.
Yep.
I was prepared to talk about it, but if you
Could we
want-
defer till the, move it down the agenda list, since we have an audience of,
Sure, or, you know, we can wait for her to come and talk to us.
Yeah, I'm just not sure she had an intention of coming in.
Oh, I thought she was gonna come next week.
I think she's out with a medical issue.
Right.
Correct.
Well, we can talk about her
Later in the
a
agenda, maybe?
little later on, sure.
Okay, I like Tina's idea.
Okay. Youth and Family Services Budget and Drug-Free Community. Come on up, please.
You get set up here. Take your time.
Are you gonna be using the overhead?
I am, yes.
Great.
Need this guy? Mm-hmm. There you go.
do you want lights out? It goes very dark if you turn the lights out, so everyone has to behave.
Dim? Is there a dim option?
There's
or is
not a
it
dim option on
pitch black?
it.
Okay, well, hopefully we all stay awake.
And then we need to turn it on. Should be up top. Oh, there it is.
Oh. Do you have copies of the budget?
Thank you.
Here.
And if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure, sure. One more for Jack.
Jess?
I'm Jackie. I'm the program director at Holliston Youth and Family Services, and I'm going to present my FY21 budget. I'm going to jump to line item 53000 professional services. There's a $10,000 increase to that line item that has to do with our presentation on funding primary prevention practices in Holliston. And so I'm going to pause the discussion on the budget and go straight to and introduce you to two people who are going to be presenting with me on primary prevention.
Okay.
So I'm going to invite up Katie Sugarman and Melissa Stacy.
Great.
Do you both want to introduce yourself too as well?
Sure.
Okay, you could have the lights on if you want. Hi, Katie.
Hi there. Hi. Awkward having my back to so many people.
I'm going to be looking up there anyway. So.
So my name is Katie Sugarman. I am a resident here in Holliston at 141 Westfield Drive. And I am the Prevention and Outreach Program Manager for the Natick Health Department.
I'm Melissa Stacy. I'm a resident in Holliston at 84 Prentice Street. And my day job, I am the grassroots manager for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. But my role here tonight is as the chair of the Holliston Drug Alcohol Awareness Coalition.
Thank you. Jeff?
All right, so I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to start with our ask. So we're looking for an appropriation of $10,000 to go towards a drug-free community program. And so that's a federal grant that we're going to talk about, and I'll go into detail on the goals of the DFC opportunity and the theory behind it, and then I'll also be talking about the Holliston Drug and Alcohol Awareness Coalition here in the community. The DFC and the HDAC kind of go hand in hand, and so we'll go through some of their strategic planning that they've done over the years, and sort of how we've identified certain risk factors. We'll also talk about what we're looking to change and some data to support our request. And please jump in at any point and ask any questions, and we'll save some time at the end, and we'll try to be as concise as possible because we know everybody has been here a while. So there are two goals of the DSC. The first is to establish and strengthen collaboration among communities, and the second is to reduce youth substance use. And this grant is, as I said earlier, a federal grant through SAMHSA, and it allocates $125,000 over the course of 5 years, with the opportunity to extend the an additional 5, so over 10 years, $125,000.
So per year, $125,000 per year for each of those grant years.
The DFC-funded program is focused on community. DFC-funded coalitions are expected to develop and implement a 12-month action plan that is community-focused and not centered on individuals. DFC-funded coalitions are successful at preventing youth substance use when the coalition focuses on changing the environment in which drug use happens by implementing strategies that will affect community beliefs, attitudes, perceptions around drug use, and coalitions can be effective when we look at those environmental changes from a holistic model. So the DFC is community focused. As I just said, we are expected to develop a 12-month action plan. I'm actually going to go back one because I think we just actually skipped. Nope, sorry, my slides are wrong. So it's community focused, meaning that we don't just take an individual or department sort of approach. It's sort of, the idea behind it is that we take a community-wide approach to these problems in order to implement strategies that will affect the attitudes and beliefs around substance use. The Holliston Drug and Alcohol Awareness Coalition has been in existence since 2015, and it's a true collaboration among town departments, community leaders, concerned residents, and providers. We represent 12 sectors of the community, which include youth, parents, businesses, media, schools, youth-serving organizations, law enforcement, religious organizations, civic and volunteer groups, healthcare professionals, state and local governmental agencies with expertise in substance misuse, and other organizations involved in reducing substance misuse. And the goal of the coalition and the collaboration with these different sectors is to work towards the common goal of building a safe, healthy, and drug-free Holliston. DFC funds are intended to support local coalitions because local problems require local solutions. Some notable accomplishments from HDAC include grants from the Metro West Health Foundation and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. They conducted a vaping awareness campaign in 2017, provided Narcan trainings, educational presentations and forums, established youth groups, parent support groups. They participated in media coverage, and they partnered with schools, churches, the Holliston Police, Fire, Health, and Youth and Family Services Department. DFC applicants are expected to choose comprehensive strategies that will lead to community-level change. Community-level strategies seek to limit access, change the culture and context, and shift the consequences. No one single strategy will create community change. Therefore, we are proposing a comprehensive approach that includes evidence-based strategies. So in 2016, the coalition conducted some focus groups with parents, middle school and high school parents. And what they found was that there are certain risk factors that are leading youth to go towards substance use. We can't say that these are all a correlation and a cause and effect, that if you, for instance, are, have a lot of pressure in school placed on you academically, that you will then, be more susceptible to a substance use disorder. We're just saying that these are some factors that we have to look at as a community when it comes to changing some of the norms and the beliefs and the attitudes we have around substance use. And so some of these include lack of structure after school, lack of supervision, social pressures, athletics, academics, attitudes and stigmas towards mental health, and lack of places for youth to be after school. And so some of these, this is from 2016, we're looking at actually going out and doing some more focus groups and doing some parent surveys to sort of see what, folks are looking for at home in terms of what do parents need in order to have some of those conversations with their children, and, what are our priority areas. And so we, as a coalition, based off of that data, discussed that the high priority right now is that the perception of youth substance use is significant. Kids don't often see it as a problem. They don't see the harm that's associated with, for instance, their vape use. And so we want to be able to really educate youth on some of those things. Also, the access socially with friends, with family, is another high priority area for us, and then just community capacity for us to address these issues. So our strategic plan right now is based off of 4 priority areas: education and awareness, policy and enforcement, increase in services and treatment, and coalition and community building. And so we'll go a little bit more into that too, and we welcome any questions just sort of around our strategic plan. But the main area for us is education and awareness, making sure that these things aren't easily accessible, making sure that the harms associated with these products and use of these substances is explained in health class, is talked about at home, and is mentioned in, over the course of the development. So not just starting with 8th graders, but really looking at it as early as 6th grade. Some people would even argue a little bit earlier for that. So this is just some data. I'm going to move us into some data that we have access to right now. I can tell you that in FY 19-20 right now we have we are servicing 106 families currently. 23% were referred for a substance misuse problem, and 49% of our referrals are between the ages of 14 and 17 years old. Our youngest client right now is 4, and our oldest client right now is 76. So we certainly, have a varying degree of population of people that we service, but our main referral base is children and adolescents and families. This is the latest data from the Metro West Adolescents Behavioral Health Survey in 2018. Lifetime use means over the course of their life. Current use refers to the last 30 days, and binge use refers to use of substances, alcohol and marijuana, over the course of their life. So so it's not within the last 30 days, which is why you see higher numbers with lifetime than you do with current use. But 67% of high school seniors report that they have tried alcohol. 41% have used it within the last 30 days. And this is some data we received from the Holliston Fire Department. I know Chief Cassidy and Chief Stone are present tonight, and welcome their remarks as well to be part of the conversation when we flip the lights on. But the Holliston Fire Department had 25 related alcohol use calls and 11 opioid abuse calls. 5 of those 11 calls required Narcan, and 1 was a fatal overdose. And in 2018, there were 9 overdoses called in, and 7 opioid-related calls. 4 required Narcan, and 1 was a fatal. And I think when you attend one person's funeral, you've attended one too many. And so, these numbers aren't meant to scare folks, but they're meant to just highlight sort of, what we're dealing with here in Holliston. as town departments and what we're all trying to do as a collective to really push the needle forward on prevention. And lastly, we want to take the host community agreement money. We want to take the revenue that's generated with the use of retail stores, not retail stores, gross cultivation sites, marijuana cultivation sites, and be able to pull some of that money and put it into prevention. This graph shows a comparison between alcohol, tobacco, marijuana among DFC awarded communities and the difference between that and a community that did not receive that funding. And so investing long-term in prevention is a win-win. SAMHSA reports that there's a cost savings of anywhere between $10 to $18 for every dollar that's invested in evidence-based programs. Youth receiving effective prevention programs are more likely to delay the use of substances. And then we can talk about the medical costs, the police and fire costs, the court costs, and just the quality of life somebody can have when they aren't dealing with the disease of addiction.
Can we ask you a question as you're going through
Sure,
this?
yeah.
Can you help me read those two charts? Because I'm trying to decipher,
See if
is
I
the
can make it
program, the question I'm asking myself, is the
Yep.
program most effective with middle or high school students, Jackie?
It looks like it's more effective with middle school students.
So on the left, you have those communities that don't have the program? Is that right?
Correct, yes.
And then those on the right have,
Those on the right are the ones that were awarded DFC money.
so just use the middle school on the right, minus 37.4%. What does
Right.
that number mean?
So 30, did you want to?
So I think, so those are actually, they both show DFC recipient communities. One is over the course of the lifetime DFC, so like since
Okay.
DFC started being awarded, and the other one shows among fiscal year 2014 DFC grant award recipients. So these show the percentage declines across each of those substances in the middle school and high school levels in those two populations. So again, all of these are DFC awardees. It's just one is over the course of the entire lifetime of DFC, which the DFC grant has been around since the late 90s. And then the second figure is specifically among communities that had the DFC grant in fiscal year 2014.
Thank you.
So, and you can probably see there are 4 substances that are identified. There are alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and prescription drugs. So every DFC community has to identify a minimum of two substances that they're going to track data on. Most communities track more than that, because if you're asking questions about 2 substances, you're probably going to ask about as many substances as you can while you have a captive audience of young people answering these questions. Most communities use a survey called the YRBS, or the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. A lot of times parents and adults say, well, how honest could they possibly be? Do they actually take it seriously? How valid are these results? The YRBS has been used for a very long time now and is really considered a very valid and reliable survey. It's through the Center for Disease Control, so it's nationally used and recognized. The survey that we use here in Holliston is called the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, as Jackie mentioned. It's a survey that's used by about 25 communities here in Metro West, and the questions are very similar to what's on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It just happens to actually go a little bit deeper than the YRBS on a lot of these behavioral health questions.
Opioids would be under the prescription field, I presume?
So there are actually distinctions. So there's prescription drugs, which would in this case refer to all prescription drugs, but you can also, in our Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, you can ask questions about non-opioid medications as well as opioid-based medications, and then there's another question about heroin specifically.
And
those 4 up there would be reasonable for Holliston to, would you add or subtract or?
All of those are already asked
Used.
about on that
Okay.
Metro West Adolescent Health Survey. The tobacco one becomes a little, I think, ambiguous now, being that vaping
Right.
has taken on kind of more of the focus of nicotine use. I mean, actually, it'd probably be easier in some ways if we classified it as nicotine rather than tobacco. Because most young people don't report using tobacco products, but those who are using nicotine use it in the form of vaping products. So now there are questions on the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey that asks specifically about electronic vapor products, and it clarifies on there that could refer to, and it includes some of the more common terms that young people use when they talk about vaping.
Do either of these 2 surveys, do they get into how the adolescents obtain the substance? So where do they get, if they're going to use any of these substances, where do they get it from?
Yep, so there are access questions,
Okay.
and so even going back to the one of Jackie's earlier slides that kind of mentioned some of the domains that the DFC grant requires communities to look at, one of them is around points of access.
Okay.
So that so some of the I would say the more common point of access that young people identify is either an older sibling or friend who either has access to an alcohol product or a vaping product, or say a cannabis product or something like that, or a house party is another common one. But certainly some of them will acknowledge getting it at home in some way, shape, or form, either with or without a parent or guardian's knowledge. And so having all that information is then kind of up to then the discretion of the coalition to work together and look at, okay, well, what seem to be the most common access points in our community? Does that mean that we need to try to do an educational a series of educational sessions with parents about, how do you kind of talk to your kids about it? How do you, locking things up properly, that sort of thing? Is it that we need to do a social marketing campaign? Is it that we need to look at it as a community at our licensing practices if kids are saying that they're getting it from a store, that they've used fake IDs or something like that? Again, that's not usually at the top of the list of the ways that young people are accessing alcohol, for instance, in Holliston or neighboring communities.
I don't want to jump your slide, so if it's coming up, just let me know.
Okay.
But is this going to show us where you get to the kids? You mentioned Chief Stone's here, Chief Cassidy.
Yes.
Is there a partnership with the schools? Is there a nexus of how you get to the kids through the schools? Is that coming up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Okay, so I'll wait.
our monthly coalition meetings involve actually Lieutenant Lorraine, who's here, Chief Cassidy, and several sectors of the community, including Holliston Public Schools, nursing, and so our focus is upstream. So we really want to get at the root causes of these issues. We feel as though educational sessions are great and wonderful, and they certainly serve a purpose, but our main focus is really looking at tackling these root issues and really getting at sort of how do we change this normalization of use, and how do we get at some of these access issues that we're seeing with kids. I don't know if that answered your question, or
So are
I'm
you
not
going
understanding
into
your
the
question.
schools to address this with the kids? Is that where you see them, or is this more programmatic and are you getting into the schools or not? I guess
Oh,
that's the question.
My department,
This program.
This program is actually a grant-funded program, and so there are things that can be done through this DFC grant. I don't know if you can speak to some of the things that you do. I can also speak to what my department does as the Youth and Family Services Department, and we liaison with the school and we go into the schools. We actually offer a drug awareness program. So for youth that are caught with substances on school grounds, the school deals with them through their policies and procedures, and then we help and come in and educate. And if they come through our program successfully after 4 classes of education, drug education.
That's the diversion program.
That's separate from our diversion
Oh, okay.
program. It's almost like a mini diversion program if you want to sort of look at it like that.
Okay.
And then kids can return to MIAA regulations in terms of their sports and then social activities and things like that.
So you have that path with the schools. I don't want to belabor the point. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
just not smart enough to figure it out. But
No.
if you got this program and you want to start making inroads with the program, how do you reach the kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the development of the drug-free community program is designed to address youth substance use and mental health issues as well. And so through the use of this grant, you know, we'd be working together to develop a more thorough strategic plan that would address some of the school issues and what they're looking for, and really sort of gathering up all the data that we can access and really making a thoughtful plan about how to apply those
Well, I'm wondering,
funds.
Katie, if you could, you're,
Sure, I
run
could.
this program in Natick, is that correct?
Yeah, so I
Maybe
could
you
give-
speak about how
Sure.
it looks in Natick.
Sure.
really briefly.
So we work closely with the schools. The schools are on the steering committee. The superintendent is on the steering committee of our coalition, along with the chiefs of police and fire, our public health director, and then a number of local nonprofit organizations that work closely, have similar mission and goals with us. Our partnerships with the schools kind of branch in several different levels. So one is looking kind of broadly at school policy, curriculum, and kind of working in partnership to support the schools in implementing evidence-based practices. And so, for instance, you know, the schools have, you know, benchmarks, frameworks that come down from the Department of, you know, from DESE, from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that says, you know, by X grade, students have to, you know, understand the impacts of substance use on the body or something like that. But the state doesn't dictate which curriculum you need to use to get to that goal. So within our coalition, we might have the bandwidth or the time or the interest of within one of our subcommittees to actually do some research in what are some of the, you know, kind of newer curricula that are available that we want to make our schools aware of, for instance. So like the Botvan Life Skills curriculum out of Columbia University is kind of considered a gold standard. And so we worked closely with our schools in Natick to purchase the curriculum and to actually help fund training for staff. So that's kind of a higher level. And then, or like an environmental change, you could say, right? So then that actually trickles down through curricula. But then we also have a youth group at the high school that we sponsor in collaboration with the with school staff. So that's completely peer-led. So we've got students who are getting trained in best practices of understanding, like say why vaping is not healthy for you, but also how the marketing strategies of some of these companies might be targeting young people in particular to kind of help them then relay the information to their peers. Because obviously it's kind of a lot, it's going to have a different spin coming from your peer as opposed to, you know, an adult. And then we're also bringing those high school students down to the middle schools. We're actually going to be piloting in one of the middle schools in Natick this spring, bringing high schoolers down to the middle school level to educate middle schoolers in their health class about kind of, you know, if your perception is that everybody in high school drinks or smokes or vapes or whatever, like, we're here to tell you that's really not true, and, you know, kind of trying to dispel some of those myths. One of our long-term goals in Natick that we're working on right now is trying to get down to the elementary school level more. So those are some examples of the more direct work with students, and then a lot of our focus is on the parent component too, because I think the schools are often doing a lot with students, but they only have control over what happens to those students when they're in their building, and there's so much education. And I think a lot of parents, I mean, I'm the parent of 2 Placentino students here in town. I think most parents of kids my age are not thinking about this stuff. They assume like, you know, this is something I don't need to worry about until my kid's in 6th or 7th grade. And yet a lot of the data suggests that young people's opinions or perceptions of alcohol are pretty well formulated by the time they're 11. So if we're not really having big conversations about this stuff until they're 10, we've actually missed the boat, and, you know, we need to be starting much younger. So trying to get parents more kind of adept at understanding how do we have age appropriate conversations with our kids as young as possible about kind of what's good for our body, not good for our body, and why, you know, we never take a medication without checking with mom and dad first, and all these things.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry if that was too long-winded.
No, it's perfect.
So
Thank
that's
you.
all we have. If any additional questions or?
Thank you. It's amazing all that you do with such a small budget, but yet, you know, you tap into resources and opportunities with grants and things.
I would not be able to do it without the coalition. Melissa, Stacy, and a really committed group who's been doing this since 2015, basically trying to do everything that the DFC tells us we need to do that's evidence-based. This group has been doing it, and they're who we should turn to when we have questions on how we deliver substance use education. in our community. So I feel very confident in the work that the coalition has been doing.
Any questions?
No, so I've
about
met,
the budget,
yeah,
or-
no, I've met regularly, oh, with the budget? No, I'll let you present it.
Okay. So that is sort of the reason for such a big increase in that line item. The $4,500 that's in addition to that actually goes towards a consultant that I work with. She provides group supervision as a program for my clinicians, and we would like to keep that. That's the remaining need for us to be able to do. The other increases have to do with the administrative salary line. So what you're seeing there is an increase that was given to me by Sharon, vetted by Sharon, that increase, and has to do with some increases that town directors received.
Right.
Everything else remains the same because of the 1% being eaten up by some of these other areas in the program.
Your administrative assistant salary is going up almost $19,000.
Yeah, so that was actually a 30-hour-a-week position for FY19. We actually were able to increase it to 40 hours, and in addition, that grade and step actually changed. And so that's why you're seeing an increase in that.
When did it go to 40, Jackie?
It went to 40 last budget season in May.
For FY20?
Yep, July 1st went into effect. There was also, apparently, I was told on Monday by Sharon that there was a miscalculation or there wasn't a miscalculation, but I think what went into town meeting, what was voted on, was for the 30-hour-week position. And so we actually have to do an override to be able to fund that position. That's something that was talked about with Sharon and also relayed to the Finance Committee as well.
Who's your FinCom liaison?
Ken.
Have you spoken about that?
Oh, I was told it was, I'm sorry.
It's me.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Have you spoken with your liaison about that jump in the administrative
I
assistant
spoke to
salary?
Ken about it.
Oh, okay, you didn't speak
Yeah.
to him, no, okay, because he asked me to find out, but you've spoken to him since then?
This was
So that would
some-
explain why it's gone
Wednesday.
that much, up that much in a
Right,
year. It was
right.
an oversight of the amount of hours calculated.
Right.
Okay. And I have a couple of other questions about your presentation, if you don't mind, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
go right
real
ahead.
quick. I saw a lot of statistics up there, and when it comes to these kind of programs, I was keenly interested to see, what's your baseline? How are you going to know once a program gets underway, after a year, you measure it, what are you measuring it against? What numbers are you going to say, yep, it's working? Are there the HPD numbers, the HFD numbers? What's your metric?
That's actually very basic. You know, you can probably speak to all the data you go into in terms of.
Well, for the purposes of the Drug-Free Communities grant, the baseline is whatever the most recent survey is that you're reporting on. So, like, as I mentioned, you have to track at minimum of 2 substances. So you enter whatever the most recent survey administration is that you would have of the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey.
Is that, I'm sorry, Coach, is that the 2016 information you talked about?
2018
is the most
2018?
recent one.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So that's administered every 2 years. So the next administration of it would be this coming fall, 2020. If, in fact, the grant writing funds are appropriated to support a DFC application, my understanding is that the DFC application wouldn't be until 2021, right? So the grant, just to clarify, the grant cycle is that usually the request for proposal or the request for a response comes out from the federal agency in usually December or January. Applications are usually due in mid to late March, and then you don't usually find out until the following late August or even early September whether or not you got it. So if the application is being submitted in 2021, the results from the 2020 survey will probably not be available just yet. They'll still be probably being analyzed. So it would probably be the 2018 data that would be the baseline.
How much money do you get in your Natick drug-free grant? What are you spending per year?
So the Drug-Free Communities grant is $125,000 a year, and that's what we get from the feds. You have to match it. The community that gets the grant does have to match it at 100%. Now, that includes in-kind contributions of, say, 1% of the superintendent's time, 1%.
But everything you told us earlier, you're hitting the 125,000.
Yes, yes.
So my follow-up question is, why did we go for 10,000? Why 10? Why not
So
something else?
the 10,000 is to hire a grant writer that could put together, it's a very extensive application process.
Grant writer? Okay.
And so it would be, the 10,000 would be to put that together, compile the data, all of the information, so that it's done on Jackie's plate. We would work with them, and the coalition would support them.
Right.
That's why the 10.
My final remarks, I know it's getting late, so just to let you know what my thinking is, love the idea that you guys are hitting the HCA money. The Finance Committee, hello, you all. The host community agreement money, we talked about it earlier tonight. So far, Holliston's received $486,000. Some of that money's already been spent, because when we get it, it goes into the general fund. It's not typically spent, so it becomes free cash, and then the Finance Committee splits it up into the warrant and is voted upon typically in the fall and gets vaporized into spending. So it's not being isolated enough to my liking. I've asked the Finance Committee, we will be asking the Finance Committee to consider creating a separate stabilization account to hold that money separate for things like this, safety equipment, public health, that kind of thing.
Middlesex retirement.
I wouldn't fund the Middlesex retirement with this money.
Well, we said we were gonna.
A separate stabilization fund, yeah.
Oh, that's the second
Yeah.
stabilization fund,
Right,
yeah.
right.
But on this is perfect for that. This is the kind of thing we should be doing with that money, rather than just seeing it, fade into the balance sheet. So I love it. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Good work.
I would just sing Jackie's praises. She's been clear on this vision since my first meeting with her back in May after I got elected, and it's great to see you pull it together and present it so well to the community, to us, and tomorrow night to the Finance Committee as well. And you may not know this, but Jackie is performing, I think if I've got it right, Jackie, you have 28 hours of clinical week of work. 28 hours of clinical work per week, it is getting late, that she's filling through interns. So she has one 10-month intern that is under her direct supervision, not in her job description, that she is using. Her name is Sarah, and she's from Simmons University, to help carry the load. That's an unpaid internship position.
Nice.
So Jackie's working incredibly hard over at Youth and Family Services, and I think that she deserves some acknowledgement for that, so I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jackie.
Just for the record, you want to just recognize Chief Stone, Chief Cassidy. I presume you're both in full agreement with the submission?
Yeah, full support of it. Absolutely.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. And the lieutenant is too.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the Youth and Family Services budget as presented.
Do we have a
Second.
second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming. Thanks for coming.
We have a question here.
Is there an adjustment to FY19 for that salary? Or is it?
That might be a Sharon question. I can't see it on here, Michelle, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
The salary shows at 41,060, so it
Okay,
doesn't
so
look like it.
that's just for the FY21, but you don't, okay, I'll ask Sharon.
Yeah, I think it's a Sharon question.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Great presentation for the community.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
We have some board business
Thank you, Michelle.
to take care of. Get the meeting minutes of January 21st and January 27th.
Move to accept the meeting minutes of January 21st and January 27th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a presidential primary warrant Ms. Greendale has provided, which is on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. Do we need a motion for that, Jeff?
Yes.
I would think so, right?
Yep.
May I have a motion?
A motion to approve the presidential primary warrant for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. We have budgets on Council on Aging, DPW, Fire, and ambulance and emergency management. So let's start with Council on Aging. If you would
We all
come up.
aged a little bit in the last hour there.
Well, the two Lindas are here, and thank you for coming, and you've got this fine gentleman with you.
Hi.
So if you don't mind introducing yourselves to the folks.
Sure. Linda Marshall, Director of the Senior Center.
Linda Sortilli, Assistant Director of the Senior Center.
Bob Hopkins, I'm Vice Chair of the Council on Aging.
Excellent.
Bob is here with us in Bob Malone's absence.
I see.
I've asked Linda Sortilli to be here as I am facing major surgery next month and will not be attending the FinCom meeting. Linda will be there in my absence. So this way, there's continuity and she knows
Right.
what is discussed here. Do you want any copies of my budget or do you have them?
If you have one to hand out, that'd be great, because I should have.
Yep.
Oh, do you
I
need,
have-
I have it here. No, no.
Someplace have my own. And please note, Senior Center likes large print.
Jeez.
I do like large.
Chuck, do you need one?
This might be the new standard, Linda.
And some other
I
information.
like it a lot.
So, the biggest change, you will see that the overall numbers of the budget are with an increase of just over 10%. And that is because we are seeking a new part-time administrative position for 19 hours. The handout that I just gave you, the very top sheet, shows the growth in some of our numbers in the past 7 years. It was 7 years ago that we last had an increase in staffing. So simply the numbers of seniors in Holliston, and for our reference, it is 55 and older, has grown by 53% in those 7 years. The number of visits to the senior center has increased by 50%. The number of weekly and monthly programs has increased by 90%. Fitness, the number of meals served has gone up 54%. And our number of rides that we've given, which is my personal program, that I've grown from 496 rides when I first started annually to now 5,492 rides.
Amazing. Yeah.
But all of this is taxing to the staff.
Right.
That we're spending more and more time putting out fires and not being able to prevent them.
Right.
Because we're jumping from a senior in crisis to a senior in crisis. We had one day in December that we were actually working with 4 separate cases with the police department that same day.
Wow.
It seems lately the police are in almost every week with concerns about somebody in town. We see homelessness in our seniors. We see hoarding issues with our seniors. We see grossly substandard living situations for some of our seniors. We have substance abuse with our seniors. Seniors who are being abused or neglected, seniors who...
Food insecurity.
Yes, food insecurity. We can go on. And in my 15 years here, I see these numbers at the highest level that I recall seeing for some of these really major. And part of that is we're seeing an increase in the highest end of the aging population. So not that they're the only ones that take a lot of our increased time, but it's more and more. We have more seniors that do not have either family nearby or family at all, so they're dependent on us. The resources have become less and less available. We had a client in the other day who had been referred and approved for services through Bay Path Elder Services, and their charge is to provide services to low to moderate income seniors. She's been waiting for 6 months to get home health care and is still waiting. So all of this is just taking time. And some of the time we spend, an administrative person could just do, she could do, or he or she could do scheduling of rides, take the phone calls, do the invoicing to the MWRTA, help with ordering supplies for the center. I start my day every day making coffee. From that, we go to setting up tables and chairs or taking them down from whatever the next program is. So to have another pair of hands to do those types of things. And our number's only gonna keep growing.
And you have a lot of volunteers too.
Oh, we have a tremendous number of
Yeah.
volunteers. But there's certain things that they
They
can't do.
can't do, right.
And we have good support from the community and from some of our business partners in supporting some of the programs, many of the programs that we run. Our Friends Group is tremendous. The other item that's at risk this year is we are going to overexpend our transportation program. As those rides keep growing and we're doing it with the same money. The other thing we were asked about a year ago is if we could assist with veteran services rides. Some of those have been pretty expensive rides, as they're a one-on-one, so one driver, one passenger going into the VA system. So you're talking a minimum 4-hour ride.
And that's been added in the last year or so.
That's
right?
been added in the last year or so. We were asked by Veteran Services, when we got the car, to help us transportation, except we're not seeing any funding, so we are absorbing the cost of that funding. In addition to just the continued increased needs. I mean, we don't take people to doctor's appointments, we don't take them to get their groceries. I mean, what do we stop?
Right.
I mean, I'm very proud that we've grown this program the way we have.
So I think I'm a little bit lost following your budget as it's listed here. You are asking for a new part-time position.
Right, which is listed under clerical salaries.
Okay, so that's the 124. Okay.
Yes.
And currently you have one person performing that job who is part-time.
Currently, we actually don't have a clerical position at all. We have not for several years.
I guess what I meant to ask, I asked it wrong, is who is performing so you currently have an administrative assistant doing the transportation program, data management, communication, as you've got it listed here?
Yes. They consider administrative assistant, both the assistant director and the outreach coordinator fall into that category for payroll purposes.
So it's being done by multiple people.
And that's the 51-110 administrative assistant? I'm sorry, so let me just go down from the top. The 51-100 is a full-time position?
That's where you're at now.
That's,
Start from the top. So,
that's
Oh,
the director.
51-100, okay.
Yep, that's a full-time.
So 51-100 is me,
Okay, full-time.
yes.
Okay, and then the 51-110, that is,
Is the assistant director, Linda.
how many hours is that?
We're both full-time, 37.
Okay, so 2 FTEs there. Then we go down to, just jump down to the 51-113, and that's a part-time 20-hour, 19-hour position, is that what you had said?
That's the proposed new position.
Yes.
Sorry, at 19 hours?
Yes,
This
Okay.
would be
and that would be
2021.
a grade 200.
Grade 200, thank you.
I'm sorry, confirm again, 19 hours?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Mark, go ahead, it's okay.
I just,
Linda, how many hours do you work? 35?
37 and a half.
Oh.
All three of us are full-time at 37 and a
okay.
half.
Tina, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Linda, in 2018, line 51-113 did have a full-time salary there.
Yeah.
It did.
Did it move up to the 51-110?
Yes, we had two part-time people at grade 200 at that time. But recognize when she left, Linda moved initially into that, we combined 2 part-time positions into 1 full-time. But the reality of the responsibilities that she was taking on really didn't match an administrative assistant position. And this board approved increasing it to a grade 400 and making it an assistant director position 2 years ago? Last year? 2 years ago.
Last year was the first full year.
Yeah.
So the only thing that gives me pause, I generally support your request, but I haven't been on this board that long to
Mhm.
know if the finance committee is going to look at this and say, well, wait a minute, we placed more people as full-time because you showed us similar numbers about the growth of seniors in Holliston.
So there used to be
So I'm
two-
just asking, I'm sorry to cut you off, I'm just wondering if there was a justification to bring those people on full-time then that's similar to this, because I wasn't around then. That's my question.
Right, so we stayed at the same number of hours. Actually, we lost a half an hour a week in the process of doing that. So we didn't increase any hours then. It was just recognition of the level of work that we were expecting.
From clerical to admin.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I understand what you're getting at, John, you would be curious to see 2018 numbers, to see the change 2018 to 2019, because that move into the full-time position happened in 2018. So you're curious about the change in numbers?
It happened in 2019.
Sorry, 2019.
That's when it consolidated. But as Linda's saying, that consolidation of resources didn't really get them any more hours. It was a recognition of job grade. And they moved it from clerical to admin. But I want to make sure that as
It
we...
merged 2 part-time positions.
Gotcha,
So
yeah.
from 4 employees
And when
to
you
3
did that, was
employees.
there any conversation with the finance committee about, did they push back? Did they say, whoa, you're giving us benefits now, this is really playing into our balance sheet?
One
What's
of
the
the
justification?
positions was already benefited. It was a 20-hour and an 18-hour position that were combined. So the 20-hour was already a benefit position. So they were already paying benefits.
Was there any pushback on that from the finance committee at the time?
Once they recognized that they weren't going to be adding benefits, so it was already a benefited position, there was not.
Okay, so to conclude, you have not gone to the finance committee the last several years with the need to expand your budget based on increased
Correct.
use of the senior center. This is the first time you're coming that way. Got it. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
And we have met with our liaisons already.
Oh, good.
Who's your liaison on the
So,
finance?
so,
Sue Necessarian?
yeah, so we met with her and Michelle.
I'll make a motion to approve the FY21 Council on Aging budget at $255,277.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The DPW is here, and he's got 2 things to talk about. One of them is budget, and the other is a reserve fund transfer, so I think we'll just do both, if you don't mind.
Does Chief Cassidy go last because he's got the best commute?
We're gonna make him do second last,
Second last?
yeah, 'cause I like his shirt.
Yeah. He's a fashionable guy.
Do you have, does everybody have a copy of the budgets?
Yep. Oh,
Can I have a copy, sir, if you have a copy? A hard copy would be nice. Do you need a hard copy?
I'll take one.
He'll take a,
If he's got
John
one.
will take a hard copy.
If you don't,
I just made extra copies, so I got some notes on it. so
How was the
I'll do it.
toner?
Well, this toner worked all right.
Okay.
That's the highway stuff.
Thank you.
sure.
Okay.
Here's the water.
Oh, thank you.
All right, let me thank Ben. We've met for hours to discuss the budget. Jeff participated in a conversation last week. Tom Smith and Kellogg at the highway, who assisted Linda Mann. So it was a really collaborative team effort to put these budgets together. Okay, so I
And
just
I know
want to thank
Ben
them
has
for
a
all of
lot
their
of-
hard work and all their time that they take out to do these things.
I know Ben has a lot of patience.
Yeah, sometimes you need it. Okay, so you want to talk, which one do you want to talk about first?
Why don't you do the highway?
Okay, all right. So this is presented just slightly under guideline at 98%, okay? Both of these budgets are union employees, and they're in negotiations now, okay? So what we did was assumed just a guideline of 1% increase for union, okay? There's 2 salaries that are frozen in there. The clerical salary received a 1%. We had a little decrease in longevity due to some attrition. So I don't know if you have any questions about that. It's all at guideline frozen, assuming 1%, all that type of stuff, okay?
I'm looking at the regular salary up at, going up 2.23.
Yeah. I know, that's just due to step increase. So
Yep.
you can see my notes right there. So step increases throughout the year. So hiring, if they're hired, they still have a 6 months, and then they get to, they get a step. A year after, they get a step, and
Okay.
You know, so, but there was nobody that received over 1%.
Okay,
And
understood.
who knows what they'll get down the road.
Okay.
That's just the assumption now, okay? And we didn't move anything else, unfortunately, on the highway side to maintain, to come in at the 1%.
Fuel is staying the same.
Well, I mean, yes, we're keeping everything, there's no changes to anything over there.
Oh.
You know, just to make the guideline. So, we didn't change the up-branching yet. We're still, kind of Ben and I are still in discussion on how we're gonna do that. But for the purpose of this budget, we're maintaining it, just as it's currently funded. But we are having additional discussion whether there's gonna be transfers or if we're gonna increase it, which it
Yeah.
really does need to be. But I've gotta get them some numbers when I meet with them as far as, some historical data, as far as the number of trees we cut, what's our run rate, this year, so, they'll require some more information, but right now,
Because
the
otherwise,
decision
you've
was.
got some
Yeah, I
pretty
mean, we'll be,
sizable reserve fund transfer.
right, so what we wanna do is stop that, so I would anticipate an impact to the up branch or an increase in that,
Okay.
but that'll be all discussion with the finance and kind of
Sure.
what we wanna do to address our
Make a plan.
existing, up branching needs.
All right. Questions?
I have none, thank you.
John?
The increase in communications, I'm sorry, not the increase, but I'm looking at the delta between what is appropriated in FY '20 and what you've spent. It looks like halfway through the year, you, communications.
Yeah, sure, I went, so,
Your
I
leg.
went over everything, all over that stuff,
Look,
let's see. what
Broadly
we-
look at the 5200 series into the 53. You're appropriated 151,000. You've only spent a quarter of that. I'm sorry, a third of that.
Right, so 3,021, correct?
Mhm.
All right, so let's see what we spend for,
Overall, Sean. I'm just, it's a
Communications.
question why he's lagging behind in the spending halfway through the year. It's
yeah,
like,
I understand, so I addressed that, let me just find where all right. So it's our phone contracts, handheld radios. Currently, it's actually at $3,500, so there's newer information, as opposed to when this was generated by Sharon.
Mhm.
So we're, what is that? Not quite halfway, but again, it's our radios, I mean, it's not an exact science, and we would probably use it to buffer other
out of the
line items.
152,000 in that line item, in the 52 to 5,300, how much do you typically end up with as a surplus at the end of the year?
In the purchase services,
Yep.
I don't think they have anything left over, to be honest with you. I think all of the, I mean, I think they do a good job as far as, well, not a good job, but I mean, they can use every dime they can over there.
Because I thought from our conversation that you were going to try to decouple the up branching from that account.
We
The
did
Finance
wanna
Committee
do
wanted to
that.
leave it in there because
Yes.
there's some flexibility in the event you gain some favorability here throughout the year for you to use towards up branching or other year-end spending. Is that right?
I didn't like it that way. I mean, I don't like that management practice. In other words, to use, like, say, oh, you still have money available in communications to cut trees. I think it's a more effective management style for Ann and Tom over there to know exactly what they have, because they have a lot of seasonal usage, rather than say, okay, we still got money that we can, you know, kind of take from another account to pay for up branching. That was my preference. But I understand what you're saying, but I don't like to kind of operate that way if I can help it, but we're still going to do that.
More questions?
You've got 2.23% for your regular salary line. Is that from the existing contract or the?
Again, that's just, everybody was given a 1%, but that's through step, like,
So it's the
throughout,
one-
that happens throughout the year. But everybody, there was nobody assigned more than 1%.
Okay.
But some people get steps after the 6 months of hire, things like that. Okay,
Okay.
but it was all done at 1%, assuming, again, that's under negotiation now. But
Got it. Okay.
We had voted on increasing the purchasing of road salt if need be. I'm looking for that here. Can you?
that'd be
put
all under snow and ice.
Snow and ice.
It's all under snow and ice.
Okay.
which they've requested to deficit spend again this year, so
So it
even
doesn't
though you
have its
consider,
own.
it's not part of this budget.
Okay. All right.
So even though it's been a fairly, what you consider mild winter as far as snow, but they still had
A lot of
some
ice.
ice and vents and
Oh,
stuff like
yeah,
that, and that
yeah.
uses material. But the material is functioning as we had anticipated.
Yeah, it was something
So-
new you tried.
Yeah, it's just it's treated with like a magnesium, so it's more effective at lower temperatures.
And it's supposed to
Reduces
harm
scatter.
concrete less too.
No, I think it's probably worse than rock
Really?
salt. Yeah,
Oh,
but
I heard calcium, magnesium is
pretty
less,
hard.
less
Well,
damaging.
but this is treated with a well. I probably couldn't give you a good answer, but it's still, there's no environmental magic bullet. They're all harmful,
Yeah.
but we typically don't spread it on the sidewalks.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the FY21 DPW Highway Department budget at $1,378,579.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay,
Shonda,
Thank you.
I hope I just gave the right number. There are two numbers at the bottom.
That's the guideline. So yeah, you did give the right number.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
the water, sir?
Okay, the water is under guideline at 1% by 32%. The reason for that is we had a reduction in debt service, and actually our personal service went down a little bit. Okay, so we're $7,330 lower than FY20. Again, the same thing. The salary is my salary is frozen. The foreman and regular salaries are union. Clerical salaries received 1%. If it looks like there's some little adjustments, there's just what was last kind of appropriated last fiscal year, but there's been no increases. Okay, does that make any sense to you? Did I not explain it well, or? Like if you see my administrative salary, it says 38%. That's due to the adjustment that we had last year. That's just kind of what's remaining. But we're technically frozen.
Sean, what's the increase of $35,000 for professional services for?
So that we based that on our kind of discussion with Ben. We had what our run rates were. So we decided to increase that back up to what historically had been. So what we use that for is our Army Corps lease went up. We use that account line if we have any contracted digs. Our SCADA system for the water department. Microbec, all of our laboratory testing, which went up. Any type of filtration, any type of filters we use. Landscaping, R&R's, with R&R, our sprinklers that we had to put in for the fire department. So we just brought it back to what it was, kind of more appropriately funded it, and that's why you see the 35,000 in there, the increase.
You might understand that you collect around $3 million a year in revenue, correct, for the water retained earnings account? Is that correct?
I think it's about that.
And from that, you spend, for operational purposes, 2.3 for FY21?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So that leaves about $700,000.
Yes.
What is the $700,000 used for?
Well, that goes into the retained earnings.
Mhm.
So we would utilize that for purchasing of any type of vehicles. We've used it for infrastructure. We've used it for any any other capital improvement projects.
But the user rate fee is a separate account, correct?
So the user rate fee is what funds the accounts. I'm not sure exactly what are you looking to borrow from it or see how much there's free?
Every year we're putting 1 mile of new pipe in the ground.
Yes.
Where does that money come from?
It comes from the infrastructure fee.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So the infrastructure
That's not
fee,
shown here, right?
No, we generate about 1.4 million. Do you need to know the current balance in there?
No. So you got
Okay.
1.4 sitting in there for infrastructure improvements and that 1 mile per year, right?
That's correct. So that,
Okay.
you know, and give or take,
So
you know,
in
but
the
we generate about 1.4 in the infrastructure.
In the fall, typically when we do the capital investment pieces, you're not hitting the infrastructure fee account for any of those expenses, are you? You're
No,
hitting
we
this
do
account.
not. The infrastructure fee is solely dedicated to the pipe replacement.
Okay.
But there are times when we use some of the retained earnings for that, for the infrastructure replacement. A good example is Cedar Street. We took $350,000 from retained earnings, and also the retained earnings paid for the $600,000 for the treatment plant.
Do you have the balance of what's in the water retained earnings account right now? Because I can't see it on here.
It's $993,000. Sorry, I gotta switch my glasses to my more powerful ones. $993,788.77, and that is as of January 1.
And you're going to be coming before us a couple weeks or so to talk about a water rate hearing, correct?
Yes, yes, I am.
I see that kind of a balance, Sean. I'm just speaking for myself. I'd like to see some water rate relief.
I know you would.
No, maybe I'm speaking for more than just me. So
yeah, I know.
Keep that in mind.
Well, I think that
the balance is high.
I've had the discussion with our contractor who's doing the water rate study.
Yep.
I mean, that's simply not the way things trend, with the rates going down. I think we'd like to focus on the removal of the infrastructure fee. I think that would be...
Working on that.
Right. So, I mean, but again, come the rate hearing meeting, that would certainly be, it's always an option, you know, whether or not, and we'll kind of default to them and see what you want to do as far as a reduction of the water rates. I mean, if you think we're carrying too much of retained earnings, or
I think
what some people would consider a surplus.
Yeah.
You know, typically I'd like to keep it about $1 million for things that if something goes sideways, but again, it's
well, we have
so the town
stabilization
wants to
accounts
do.
and things like that in case things went sideways. So.
Yeah, and they always seem to be difficult to obtain, but point well taken.
The funds from a stabilization fund?
I don't know, it just seems like...
No, if
it's
something
always
went
hoops to go
sideways,
through
that
to
means
get
like you
things.
got an emergency.
Yes.
That's what it's for, and
Yeah.
we take care of those things.
I have a question about line item 53012, the well cleaning.
Yes.
So I'm just looking at the 15,000 there, and we have 8 pumps? 7
We
pumps?
do, well, we don't have that many, we've got...
Or wells, sorry, we have...
About 5.
5 wells, sorry. All right, so my question is this, how often do they get cleaned? Is
Well,
each
typically
one
we like to
cleaned?
get them on a schedule once a year. I mean, if we can do one cleaning a year.
Yep.
So that's, and that costs about $15,000. That's how we funded that. But this year, we did 2. So we were able to, I had some money left over in an old article for the well, and I cleaned another one. So that exhausted that line item. And then, kind of not to get ahead of myself, but the reserve fund transfer
Right.
is a request to clean an additional well
Right.
because the pump went. The
And
pump
therein
blew.
lies my question. So this would just accelerate that well repair?
Exactly, so we'll just
schedule,
kind
so
of
they'll
move
just move it
things up
ahead.
on the schedule, yes.
Okay. And so you're asking for a reserve fund transfer of $13,880
No, I
for...
think it's 21,000.
Well, it includes a pump
Yes,
replacement.
well,
so-
yeah, so the clean, there's a clean component now, it makes sense to do it now, because the pump is out. And so it's just an empty column there, so you clean it now rather than remobilize, pay the extra and go in, so just, it makes more sense to clean it now.
Okay, so you would just move along to the next well?
We
that
would
was
just
in line?
move right along to the next well.
Okay.
But before we do that, we need to vote on this budget.
That's right. Move to accept the Water Department's budget of $2,304,096, if I'm reading that right.
Yes, you are.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And the reserve fund transfer, sir.
Okay, do you have all the documentation for that? I guess I'll call it, for lack of a better word, the reserve fund transfer packet.
Mr. Ritter has it?
Is it in here?
With the cover letter kind of explains what it is. So,
Okay, I'll
an
have
extraordinary unforeseen expenditure.
That's not it, that's not it, Mark.
it.
That's not it,
That's not it.
that's not it. That's it.
There we go. Mrs. Hine, you want to read that?
Sure, so, Mr. Reese is requesting a transfer of funds from the reserve fund to the water department in the amount of $21,075 for the purpose of pump replacement and redevelopment, which is also known as well cleaning, again, for $21,075.
And this is so that the work can get done quickly,
Exactly,
as you mentioned.
correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, sir.
I didn't have to do the whole packet then. Okay, so while I'm up here, do you want to talk about the AP Associates?
Yes.
Articles? Okay, those are the contracts, they're AP Associates that there was some issues with last week.
Well, there were really no issues. It was just that the numbers were a little bit askew.
Okay. Okay, I don't have the contracts, I can't
I do.
remember.
They're right
Do you
here.
want 'em? Here.
Okay,
There you go. 1, 2, and 3. I think the dollar amounts are on the front.
okay,
Do you want to read that?
okay.
You want me to read this out? I'll let
I get that, it's fine. Okay.
Just so people know that are watching what we're talking about.
Okay, this first one is basically a notice of award for Cedar Street and Hanlon Road. Okay, we had the bid opening, it's now been a couple weeks. This is the notice to award the contract to do the work to PJ Hayes. It was a really favorable number for the town. We rebid it. We didn't get favorable results last year. We rebid it this year. We got about a $400,000 savings, okay? So this is their contract to notice to award the contract to them. The next paperwork that'll be in front of you will be the notice to proceed for them to start the construction phase of it,
Okay.
okay? This is all done through town meeting articles. It's all been funded, all appropriated.
You glossed over it there, but, you know,
Okay,
pat
what do you
yourself on the back, by rebidding it, you save considerable amounts of money for the town.
We did.
I think
Yeah.
you said it quickly, but it's nearly $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
meaningful.
I can speak personally from experience with PJ. Who are
PJ Hayes.
Yeah, PJ Hayes. They are the company that did Mudville.
Yep.
Out in front of our house all summer long, and they truly were fantastic. They did a really good job.
We are very happy we got them back, so,
This is fantastic. Yeah.
okay.
We'll see them around again.
Yes, so that's the first one,
Okay.
okay?
And we'll need a motion.
Move to accept the bid for PJ Hayes Contracting Services for the amount of $1,199,047. Pennies after that, and 30
30
cents.
cents. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the second is a contract for the bidding phase, which we had already, and the construction administration for the generator at well number 4. Okay, that is again, there's actually 2 articles funded through town meeting, and we're just looking to proceed with this.
And the total?
146,200.
200?
No, that is the 25,900, I'm sorry.
Oh, here it is. Okay.
This was Article 4 at Fall Town Meeting this past fall. The appropriation was for $200,000, and this is $25,900 out of that
Okay.
for the engineering services.
I've got it right here. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And the third?
The third one is an amendment to the existing contract to cover the rebid and construction phase of the Cedar Street project. So putting out the rebid, there was a cost, but this is an amendment. This is a portion of is already a signed contract. 68,000's already been used. So you can't just eliminate the first contract. It's an amendment to his existing contract, which covers the construction portion of it, the rebidding.
Post-construction?
Well, the clerk of the works is covered under this.
Okay.
Again, all funded and we're still $400,000 or $500,000 under what we had originally appropriated. So
That's really good music, I'm sure, to the finance committee's ears.
So move to accept this bid for $146,200 for AP Associates Services, Engineering Services.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, sir.
okay, I think that's it.
Very good.
Do you need these? Just copies?
No, I've got some here.
Well, these are what you gave me. These AP. Are they just,
The
I don't know if they were
originals
just
are,
copies.
the originals are in there.
Okay, so we'll just take. I'll take these off your hand then and
All right.
shred them and
Yep.
we'll sign them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Sean?
And now we've got Mr. Teal Green, Fire Chief. If you would come up and see us.
I'd be happy to have Mr. Reese do my budget, so he's getting everything he's asking for.
I didn't ask for anything. We met guidelines, so there you go. Did you meet guidelines?
And you saved
Actually,
100,000. They're
I'm
very
sorry. I forgot one thing. I apologize. We had one capital request for the highway department, purchase of a mower for $166,000. It replaces 2008 mower. This mows the fields. It's also it's
Schools.
attachment for It's also attachment for with the snow blower to for sidewalks. Okay, that is part of the capital plan that's presented to the finance committee. It's due up for this fiscal year replacement.
Was
I
it
gave
in the
quotes
capital
to
plan?
Jeff. It was. It is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of the new mower of $166,000. What was the balance, Sean?
166.
Okay.
You need the exact.
As requested by the Department of Public Works.
Okay.
Director.
Second.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I got so
Opposed?
carried away with everything going
Motion
through,
carries,
right?
sir.
Okay, thanks.
It's a good
Sorry,
thing you
Mike.
remembered that.
No,
You
I
gotta
told
get
you.
that
Yeah, I
ordered
know, I
soon,
know.
too.
Oh, we'll see if we get it approved. This is
Yeah.
phase one.
Right. I'm sure you will. It's on the plan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Does anyone need paper copies?
Nope.
Why not?
I got an extra one.
Very kind.
Mine right here.
Perfect. So I provided both the spreadsheet, which is the format provided by the town accountant, and then I did provide an 18-page supplemental document to try and provide some additional background information and statistics and graphs and charts and pictures. We'll start with the fire department budget, which is coming in at guideline. Not a lot of moving parts to this. Happy to answer any questions on any specific org categories.
I had a question down under the opportunities for further budgetary savings. You have number 4, utilize funds from HCA, so host community agreement, for approved one-time expenses.
Sure.
Does that replace something that's currently in your budget, or is this an area of growth for your department where you would seek to start have new one-time expenses?
Yeah,
I wasn't
it would be
sure.
something outside of what we're currently able to do. So it would be a new initiative, but
Okay.
would be a one-time thing. I think a perfect example would be when I first sought the funding for, say, the utility task vehicle. I had suggested that HCA, that would be a good blend for that sort of appropriation. So that was something outside of our existing fleet at the time. So just putting it out there that if you're looking to spend that HCA money, we're happy to partner with Youth and Family Services towards that grant program that they mentioned earlier. But if there's anything left over for safety, we'll be happy to spend it.
Okay, so it's not taking anything out of the budget as it is now, it'd be an additional expense?
Correct.
Okay. I'm all set, I don't have any other questions.
John?
Chief, town meeting article balances.
Oh, yes. Well,
I think it's
jumping right ahead.
15, page 15 maybe?
Sure. Yes.
I'm guessing that items at the top are older articles versus the ones at the bottom.
That is correct.
So
There's a notation on the
So-
article and the town meeting at which they were.
have you
awarded.
notified the town administrator or town accountant which items of this list on the balance side can be released as unexpended and unneeded? You have considerable balances in some of these older projects.
Yes, there are. I am not ready to release any of those. I'd like to continue to spend them, but I just want to make sure that.
So you got a brush truck.
Mhm.
You bought it for $67,471.
Mhm.
The town gave you 85. You got. What would you use the 17,500 for if you've already bought the brush truck?
So continuing to outfit it. Oftentimes what happens when we put a new piece of equipment into service is we swap over stuff from our 25, 30, or 35-year-old vehicle.
Gear drying. You haven't even touched it yet,
Right. So the gear drying, we were waiting because there was a state grant that was coming down the pipeline, and priority was going to be given to communities that did not already have a gear, the extractor and the gear drying, and so trying to use the state funds first, and I just got that signed contract from the state last week. So I'd like to use the state funds first, and then hopefully we'd be able to turn some of that town meeting appropriation back.
Traffic preemption.
Yep, so we are in the process still of putting the emitters in the fire trucks, in the police cruisers. The only ones right now that have the emitters in them are the ambulances.
So that would be part of the balance that you would be hitting that on?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, the tone voice pager is about $1,000 that's not going to be expended. Obviously, I look at these some of these balances, and I would challenge you on releasing them. I understand why you want to hold on to them, but these funds could be put right back into the general fund for use. So that was one item that caught my eye.
Sure.
Gift account balances, as we talked about, you've got about $60,000 in there. Fire gift account. What do you use that for?
So a gift account balance would be used when, this would be very similar to Ms. Hines' question about like what I could possibly use HCA money for. A perfect example would be a couple Sundays ago, several of the members of our department did a training out at the lake, practicing ice and cold water rescue procedures. And they came back to me with a very detailed list of deficiencies, equipment that was torn, that was leaking, ropes that needed to be replaced, carabiners that needed to be replaced. And they presented me with easily a $5,000 wish list. Using the gift account, I was able to immediately purchase the majority of the equipment that they were looking for.
Do you use it for travel?
Nope. Not normally.
So it's equipment and training, or supplies?
I would classify it as training, yes. So another example of what I've used the gift account for was we used that to purchase some of the training materials for our in-house firefighter 1-2 training class last fall that we did on our own.
Chief, it looks like your salary went up 1.34%. Is that correct?
The administrative salary line was filled in the spreadsheet by the accountant when it was given to department heads. I did not touch that. That was based on the adjustment that occurred back in September of 2019. And just a reminder, my salary is split between both fire and the ambulance appropriation. So there would be an equal percentage increase on the ambulance side.
Nice job, Mike, overall. I'd update the picture of the MEMA director on page 16.
Right.
I think Kurt's moved on to bigger and better things. Thank you.
Absolutely. There aren't a lot of pictures of the new director walking with the governor. And the balances from previous federally approved disaster declarations.
Any questions, Tina?
I do not have any questions.
Okay. Very good. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept make sure I'm on the right page here, move to accept the fire department's budget for fiscal year 21 to the amount, for the amount of $884,562.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
And then two more budgets, ambulance and emergency
Yes,
management.
ambulance.
Same thing, coming in at budget. Supplemental information in the packet. Are there any questions that I can elaborate on in terms of our operations?
The ambulance.
No, I don't have any questions.
Is there any talk of increasing the ambulance service? I've heard that because we're a part-time service, we don't get to people as quickly as other towns do. Is there thought to adding an additional ambulance and staff in the future? Or we've had the same thing, same numbers for a while.
Sure, we're a paid on-call ambulance service. I actually have separate data that I could provide to you with regards to our response times for this most recent calendar year that just came out recently. You need to remember that when you're discussing response time, that we're part of a tiered system. Our police officers are first responders, or some of them are also EMTs. And so when the 911 call is dispatched for a medical emergency, they're responding first and can perform both size up as well as interventions prior to the arrival of our ambulance. So just to say how long did it take the ambulance to get to the patient isn't truly metric of when did they start to get medical care prior to the hospital.
I think one of the things that we noted, because we were walking in the parade and one of the veterans had a slight heart attack, and we stayed, John and I stayed with them, and Tina, one of us needed to go up with the parade, but it took quite a while to get oxygen to them, because the first people that came didn't have it with them, and it was so close to the station that we were a little alarmed, because we recognized that it took a while for people to get to the station, get in the ambulance and come over.
I'd be happy to review the call, but as I said, it's a tiered system, and the police should be responding first, and they have oxygen in every single one of their marked cruisers.
So auxiliary was on site?
I'm pretty sure that I've outfit with them with a first aid kit that includes oxygen, because their first aid supplies and their oxygen is
Tell you what,
paid
if you review it, you find out there was oxygen in the car, give Chief Stone a call and ask him why the officer wasn't prepared to offer that.
for.
But I also think, Mark, that day, there was another ambulance on call, and I think there was another call.
Again, that's why I'd be happy to look at it.
This one came from another direction.
That would explain.
It was kind of
Yeah, so
like
8.5% of
call.
our calls in 2019 were answered by a mutual aid or a private ambulance company.
That's what happened in our case. There was no
Yeah,
otherwise.
it was a little alarming, the time before you get oxygen. Luckily, it wasn't a massive heart attack.
Sure.
It certainly alarmed us with the limited knowledge we have.
While you're looking at the fire station.
Yeah, I was like, can't we do better than this? So,
Sure.
yeah, that would be appreciated if you could look into
Yeah,
that.
which parade was that?
That was the
Veterans Day
fall,
parade.
the Veterans Parade.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any
To make a
other
motion to approve the ambulance budget as presented by the chief for FY
questions?
'21.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Third budget,
Third budget.
emergency management.
Yes, sir.
Supermajority of the emergency management budget is used for our community notification system. And if we ever don't get the emergency management preparedness grant in any given year, then we'll probably use the entire appropriation.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed emergency management emergency management budget for FY '21.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I will get you response time data, and I will also look into what happened on Veterans Day.
Thanks a million.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have a finance director position that Mr. Cronin's going to
Very brief update.
Give us a
I
little-
took the draft. I spoke to Jay Tellerman last week. I wanted to make sure that the elements of the position would not and did not collide legally with the town administrator's role, which are defined under general law and the special acts of 1994. So Jay was happy to take on the draft. Excuse me, I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Great.
And that will be pretty much in the
Thank
clear.
you, sir. Appreciate you handling that for us.
Excuse me.
Projects need list priorities, Jeff?
Sure. I'm meeting with Pooja from Senator Spilka's office on Friday morning, and she asked that in response to the board's communication with their office, that the board put a priority on your list of projects that you have.
I mean, so I'll jump in as the first to go here.
Go ahead.
I would keep the list in the order in which it appears. As I went through it a couple different times, it's simply because the issues on the list are as they were presented most often to the board. So the number one is the video detection system, and that's certainly, in my opinion, at least what this board has talked about the most in terms of considering it, not considering it, discussing it, and so on. So I would keep that as the number one project on that list, which is where it is right now. And for that reason, that it's been the thing that the board has talked about the most in terms of what's on the list. And I also, the senior center improvements I think are a priority. However, we have a couple different funding mechanisms. It appears either town meeting article and or the building fund as a way to pay for those costs. So I would not put that as a priority. And then the last one was just personally, no one from public safety's made an appeal to the board for the request for the cameras. And so for that reason, I would keep it, I would not move it up as a priority. So that's my thinking on the priority list.
The problem is if we don't put the senior center repairs as a priority, I don't know, I'm afraid it might get bumped again.
We have a member of the finance committee here tonight, and I know there was some discussion about, as Tina said, trying to fund that through the building account. Is that still a likelihood, Ben? Has been any dialogue?
Yeah, basically, my recollection, it's been a little while since I've been meeting. My recollection is that there was the building account that's under your purview for building repairs would be an appropriate funding mechanism for these particular repairs. And if there was additional monies needed, there was some free cash that was sort of set aside that could be transferred, I believe would be transferred. We hadn't specifically discussed what those what we would do, but I think it was about like $100,000 to put in there, but it would also be tied maybe the facilities, I mean, facilities manager might need some money and things like that.
Okay.
So we weren't sure of those circumstances. So basically, long answer short is that the expectation was to use that fund, and then there would be additional money in town meeting to give to that fund for that particular.
Right, so it's there, and I think there was a very, I remember a very active dialogue about doing that in the fall, so.
So currently, we have an article at town meeting in May to fund this. We do not have the money within the building's budget, that kind of scope anyway, of money to do those repairs in this current fiscal year.
I was just trying to find that budget from when we talked about it. I thought it.
Had $200,000 in it, I thought.
Yeah,
No.
I
I
thought.
don't remember off the top of my head. It's a building, I think we were thinking of it's a building repair budget account. And I believe it's under the select board's, budget. Well, no, that's a different one. It might be under public buildings. I
Can we
forget.
do a little
I'm
research
sorry,
on
I
this?
forget.
So
Yeah.
we have
I'm
to take
looking
action.
at it.
Yeah.
See what the available balance is and
Okay.
where it lands. Yeah. That's fair
Okay.
enough.
So I'll stick to what I was saying before, you know, going on the assumption that there are two other possible funding mechanisms for those senior center repairs, I would not bump it up on the priority list for the senator and the representative.
Yeah, as
That's
long
my
as-
thinking.
As long as we find that there is a mechanism to do it, they've been very patient. I
Yeah.
want to make sure that these things are important to maintain the asset there at the senior center.
So can I get some clear directions to tell Pooja as to what your priorities are?
Do you want to read what you have so far? And we'll,
I can't find the document at the moment.
I've got it here. So number one is the video detection system,
yeah,
and that's an estimated cost of $78,000. That follows McMahon's recommendations that this board chose not to, we don't have the money in the,
right.
what's remaining of the downtown lights, so that had to get bumped.
And that's a
Um,
safety issue, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, so I've talked to McMahon, had some talking points for Pooja if Jeff would like to present them. But yeah, there are multiple benefits to the video detection system as McMahon presented to the board. The second is the Holliston Public Library, estimated cost of $20,000. That is for replacing 18 years worth of, or 18-year-old carpet throughout the building. Then third on the list is the senior center improvements at $54,698. Fourth on the list is radio interoperability. That's a hard one to say, $41,633. Fifth on the list is communication operability, and that's $100,000. So those are the 6 projects on this list.
Okay. Do you need a vote, Jeff?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Video detection system, library, senior center, radio, and communications.
Well, it's as it's listed here, so it would only be if John or Mark wanted to see that priority change, that ranking change or listing.
It's all there, so they can.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you need a vote on that, or I think we already gave you a vote?
No, I'm good. I'll take it to Pooja.
We have appointments for Memorial Day Committee. The Legion has sent over their list of appointments for Memorial Day. This is a 1-year appointment. Their recommendation are Steve Bradford, Steve Napolitano, and Walter McGrath. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept Steve Bradford, Steve Napolitano, and Walter McGrath for a 1-year appointment each to the Memorial Day Committee.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And let's see here. Crafted liquor license. Jeff, you mentioned.
So we have communication from Senator Spilka's office about some changes to the proposed legislation. If you look at your
Line,
handout, it's
line 19, section D.
Section D.
Do you want to read that, Tina?
Yeah, let me find it here. It's buried a little deep. So I'll just read this change, or do you want me to read the
Yes.
whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so 19D.
Yeah.
All right, so the change is, I'm sorry, give me one more second here.
We must sign off on it.
All licenses under this act shall be converted within 1 year after the effective date of this act, provided, however, that a license originally converted within that time period may be granted to a new applicant under subsection B or C thereafter.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Annual town meeting warrant. The,
You can hold on that for now.
yeah, because,
It's going to be on your agenda from now on.
right.
So you'll have another chance next week to take a bite of that.
Event permit, Tetra Truck. An approved event permit is in the agenda backup file. We have a motion.
So move to accept the permit request by the Holliston newcomers and neighbors for the event called Touch a Truck, which will be scheduled, which will be held on Sunday, June 14th, 2020 in the Miller Placentino School parking lot.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, John, you wanted to talk about some,
So the town clerk has submitted a request to fund her salary at an increase above her FY '20 rate. The matter was addressed last year in FY '19 for FY '20, but because we removed Article 1 from the fall town meeting warrant, she never received the correction.
okay.
So according to our bylaws, she needs to negotiate her rates with us. She has submitted a proposal to us, which I looked over this afternoon. And I don't think we should take a vote yet. What I'd like to do is sort of vet this with you, and then tomorrow night I'm going to the Finance Committee meeting. I'll let them know what we're thinking, because there are some pieces here and I want to explain. So the town clerk has been either in the current position of full town clerk or assistant town clerk for over 16 years. there have been some reviews of her salary with respect to comparable communities similar to Holliston, including Ashland, Hopkinton, Medway, and Millis. Millis falls off as a comp because their town clerk is not full-time. And looking at the salaries of individuals in Ashland, Hopkinton, and Medway, their salaries are trending from the high 80s to the low 90s. Hopkinton is the low 70s. He's brand new. He was just hired. So I feel like Liz was, when we looked at this for FY20 last year, we placed her in the M2 grade, in the middle range, given her experience. And so her salary was supposed to be $77,917. It didn't get picked up that way.
She also mentioned to me that when she was hired by Paul LeBeau, that she didn't have 2 certificates at the time. And,
Correct.
And when she acquired those, she was supposed to get a good size raise. So this is part of that.
Right.
And it was unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
that no one caught that she was the only department head that was elected and needed to have her raise handled differently. But it was an honest mistake by everyone
Mm-hmm.
in town hall. It was not caught, and not even by our town council. So I think being the only elected department head slipped through the cracks. So this is a correction for her position.
Had she been brought in under the salary correction of the other department heads, again, she was excluded because she's an elected official, her salary had to be approved differently, and it was not. She would have received $6,798 increase to correct what you're talking about. That would bring her to $84,715. So what I want to talk to the Finance Committee about tomorrow night is sort of the sequence of these numbers and get their flavor for putting this in the FY21 omnibus as a separate article, right? Because that's what we're doing. Her salary will be reflecting a sort of an adjustment that she should have received, and then we can review it next year to see how it needs to settle in given her experience.
My only question on that is, so for FY22 then, if it were to be adjusted down, say, you would adjust it up to catch up, is what I'm understanding.
That's
so
right.
then you would look at it again in FY22. Would you need another article to make a change in any direction?
As I understand what Mary's saying, we're always going to have an article for elected officials' salaries and
Okay,
and
so
so
it
forth.
would just be reflected at...
Yep, and
Okay.
that's where it'll be parked. It's a little bit more public.
So do I understand you correctly, this is not a specific article that's unique to this warrant, it's going to just simply show the reflection of what we're talking about tonight? So it was there last
No.
year, there the year before?
It wasn't there last year. It's going to be there this year.
Okay.
And forevermore.
Right.
Oh, okay.
As a means to
Understood.
show those salaries
Understood.
going forward.
Okay.
So that's where I'm leaning. If you guys have any feedback, let me know. I'll share it with.
Any feedback from you, Ben? Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable. My understanding is that, just what you've stated, the town meeting has to approve any of the changes that are made to her salary.
Right.
I think that's the only thing, and that's the mechanism.
It's really the correction piece, Ben, that's
Right.
gonna, and I think we need to have a conversation about that. There's a fairness piece of it that I think just needs some good discussion.
I completely agree.
Especially where she did get those 2 certificates.
Sure.
And was promised by Paula Bowe that she would get a sizable increase when she got those. I think that's part of it too. To respect that. what
So I'll
she was-
come
what
back.
she was told. by
If you could put it on the agenda for
the
next
former town
Tuesday.
administrator.
Mark, I'll come back next Tuesday for a vote on this.
Okay.
After we teamed up with the Finance Committee to see if there's
Okay.
anything unusual. It's a significant amount of money, so.
Yeah.
Want to make sure you guys all hear the details.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Any other business?
Yes. You skipped over the tri-board.
I'm sorry. Tri-board meeting is being prepared for the Finance Committee, Select Board, and School Committee. A proposed agenda is in our backup file.
Do you have a date on that, Jeff?
I don't have any date yet.
Okay.
Do we,
I'm in. I was hoping it could be on a weekend day to the extent that that's favorable, but it's a busy time of year, and I've always said I'm fine with having a tri-board, especially as we circle the issue associated with the high school and the finance committee's thinking on the warrant and the debt and all that. So I think we should do it in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So on a
If
Saturday,
possible. If
you
possible.
have February 29th is a Saturday, and you have March 7th is a Saturday, and you have March 14th.
When is the school due to come in and see us, Jeff? Do you have a date for? I thought
On the
it's-
SOI?
Yeah.
Pretty
We're
soon.
waiting for the debt schedule from Mary.
Yeah, I'm meeting with her tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night, rather.
So once the debt schedule is,
That 29th looks like a good date.
February 29th.
Yeah.
2/29.
So can you try to
Yeah, in the
arrange that
afternoon.
with everyone? See if it works?
Afternoon?
PM. Like noon.
Like noon
Mm.
on the 29th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, how do you see the agenda being set? Do you see discussion ahead of time on setting that agenda? Do you see,
I prepared an agenda, I think, a draft agenda to
Right.
be in your packet. I can circulate that amongst the three chairs.
Yeah, I think that's to be decided amongst the three boards. Clearly, there'll be a lot of discussions about a lot of things. It might be some sort of a vision session, capital improvement, certainly, and omnibus budget, maybe some
Mhm.
items on that. So, I mean, it's a pretty extensive agenda, so 12 p.m. sounds like a good time, because we might need 2 or 3 hours.
Maybe more.
Maybe. I hope not.
We could do hours 4 and 5, right after the election if you want. Just planning ahead for you, Mark.
But, yeah, I think the agenda between the tri-boards will be filled in by then.
So there was some discussion about having a moderator present, and
It wouldn't be a
I
bad
was
idea.
I was thinking that maybe Bill Mayer might be able to find some time to
It's his job.
Yeah, if he's,
step in and just sort of help facilitate the discussion.
yeah, if he's available, that'd be great. If not, then we'll have to find someone else, so. See if he's.
I mean, I can certainly reach out to him, but does anybody know him more than?
I have an email out to him anyway from last week after we talked about
Okay.
conversations for town meeting. So I can just ping him again, and he says he's busy right now, and we'll find a time. But I'll let him know that February 29th is coming up. And
At noon, and what location? Here? Or last time we met was at the golf course?
Somewhere with padded walls, maybe.
I think the high school library would make sense.
10 o'clock.
That seems to have enough seats. It's a public building.
Yeah.
Or the senior center.
It's a Saturday, so yeah. See what they'd like to do.
So Tina, you're gonna reach out to Bill?
I will, yeah.
Thank you.
If he may ask for structure, what's the structure of this meeting? If we're talking 2 or 3 hours, that's a long time to sit around a table and discuss. So I'll get back to the board if he has some questions about that. What we
I'll
might-
put it on the agenda next week.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Do we have a second to adjourn?
Yes, second.
Okay, all's in favor?
Aye.
It is, oh my goodness, is that correct?
It
5
is.
minutes of
It
10?
is.
4 minutes of 10.
Having
My
so much fun.
slippers are about to
Thank you, folks,
turn.
and have a nice evening.
Pumpkin's about to turn.